Ready? Okay, good morning, everyone. Let me call to order the regular planning board meeting of February 15th, 2024. Since we do have a quorum here, we'll call to order and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Before you turn to right.
Our first order of business always is to poll the board for, does any member of the planning board have a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest with regard to any item on the agenda? If so, state at this time. We'll go down the row. Richard?
I do not.
Stuart?
I do not.
I do not.
I do not.
I do not.
Thank you. Our next order of business is to amend or approve the agenda. And what I'd like to suggest is one small change to the order of the agenda, but not change the items, is move into the number 3 position, consideration of approval of the November 16th, 2023 minutes as the number 3, and move public comments down to number 4, since that's will keep the main item of the meeting kind of in the same grouping and not have that one clerical item end up in between the comments and the new business.
I so move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? No? The ayes have it. So in that case, our next thing to do is look at the minutes of the November 16th, 2023 meeting, which we all have from staff. Those that were at the meeting, so that would have been Jerry, Sybil. Any changes? I did, after our last discussion at the last meeting, go back and review the YouTube on this meeting because I didn't realize that I wasn't at that meeting. So I have a couple comments, I guess, to see if the planning board would agree. On page 2 of the minutes, packet page 3, the rezoning request for New Purpose LLC. I agree with the text as stated, except in one area, kind of in the second paragraph in the middle, where it says the subject could be used for 7 lots home. This is when Sheila McLam was speaking. I think a key point she made during that was that there would be 4 driveway cuts from the 7 homes there on the 904. And the other thing I noticed was there was quite a long discussion between property A155 and A15101, and what's included in it. And during the meeting, there was what appeared to be a map that was handed out, and I wonder would it be appropriate to attach that to the minutes? Maybe staff can talk, because it seemed to like it completely resolved that issue. So for the people the 2 that were here, I guess, I'd like to hear your thoughts on those 2 items before we move on.
On the 4 cuts, the TRC reviewed that, having the 4 cuts in that property.
This was not a TRC.
It wasn't a TRC.
No. I mean, at the point where the applicant was to bring forward a residential subdivision, then potentially TRC would get involved depending on the size of it and what goes into it. But at a condition or a straight rezoning, general rezoning map amendment, it would not trigger TRC review.
Yes. Well, it wasn't. I mean, the way okay, but my interpretation of watching it was something that was created during the break and then handed out. So in other words, there is a record of it someplace. If somebody wants to see that map, they can see it.
Yeah.
That's, I guess. Okay, so there is a public record of it and accessible. That's my only concern, because it seemed to resolve that whole crisis that took 10 minutes of discussion on those two parcels. So as long as there's a public record, if someone can take a look at it and see what that said, then I'm fine with it. Someone like, and then make a motion to approve this minutes with the one phrase added.
Yeah, that's fine. I go so moved.
Any second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Nope. The ayes have it. So the agenda with that one small phrase added is approved. Okay, our next order of business. Well, there's no old business to talk about. So our next order of business would be public comments on agenda items only. So we have a lot of public present today. And I guess a little bit of the rules. I would like each speaker, when they come up, to identify themselves by name and address so that we can record that. Try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Be as concise as you can on the agenda item today. I will keep a timer, but it's not to stop anybody from speaking. It's to allow everybody to get their say in. And for board members, especially new board members, there's no interaction with the speaker. It's not a question and answer period. It's just to listen and to absorb. So, anybody would like to speak? Gentleman in the back with his hands up.
So good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for letting me say my little spiel, just a little short statement. My name is Steve Strini, and I'm at 7645 High Market Street. And so I have a prepared little statement here. We own property here in Sunset Beach, and the area has certainly undergone rapid growth. I know that with most any development, your hands are kind of tied no matter what the circumstances are. Since this will probably be the case, my concern turns to the burning of the trees and the brush. I believe this is one area the town could put its foot down and say no, that we are not okay with a prolonged period of choking the air with smoke. We saw that recently with Bill Clark's sanctuary, with the ash from his burns covering cars and everything outdoors, including breathing this into our lungs. We should not have to run for cover to help profit a developer. Anything you can do with this concern could be a consolation prize for the surrounding residents that will otherwise have to endure months of breathing difficulties and filthy air to help profit yet another development. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Right here, blue shirt, then we'll get light blue in the back.
Good morning. My name is George Smith, and I live at 7406 Huckleberry Lane in Sunset Beach. I'm here today to tell you why this proposal does not deserve to be accepted. First, it violates the future land use plan, which says that this entire property should be only residential. Instead, the developers want you to skip over the land use plan and let them line Sunset Seaside Road with commercial buildings, apartment buildings, and a multi-building storage facility that would be immediately adjacent to the sanctuary residential neighborhood. Also, this proposal violates the Unified Development Ordinance, which requires that single-family homes need to have a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet in this MR3 district. Instead, these developers want you to do them a huge favor and let them have lots that would be around 4,000 square feet or less. That's a 60% reduction off of the required lot size. And there's no justification for them to have this. They just want it. And they want to do it 894 times. Don't fall for this. It would set a very bad precedent, and you would be hard pressed to say no to other developers later on. You just got the 10,000 square feet in 2022, and I say enforce it. The UDO is the law in Sunset Beach, and these developers can obey the law just like everybody else. You do not have to say yes to any of this. Just vote the whole thing down. It violates the land use plan and the UDO, so you have every justification for recommending denial. You do not owe these developers anything. They're not offering the town anything. They're giving up nothing and asking you for everything. This is a big piece of land right at the gateway to Sunset Beach. Don't let these people mess it up. So I urge you to just say no to these developers. They already have the right to build 1,034 single-family homes on this property. That's grandfathered in. So I highly recommend to them that they create an attractive neighborhood with amenities and nice aesthetic appeal that would be 100% better than what we're looking at today. Thank you.
Yep. You want to access?
Hello, everybody. My name's John Shelton. I live at 1176 Kingsmill Court. That's in Sea Trail, right across Angels Trace Road from this property, so it's literally in my backyard. The town's UDO was modified just a few years ago, as we just heard, when it became abundantly clear that developers were packing more and more residential units onto smaller and smaller lots. That was the whole purpose for kicking in this UDO revision. When evaluating an application for the creation of a conditional zoning district, the planning board and the town council are required, among other things, to consider the application's consistency to the general policies and objectives of the Unified Development Ordinance. You guys all know that. I just wanted to make it clear to everyone else. Since this application is not consistent with the UDO, I recommend you vote against the plan as currently submitted and consider the following during your deliberations. I'm sure something will be developed. I'm fine with development, but follow the plans. Remember, this is the last large parcel that you have jurisdiction over regarding adherence to the UDO within the Sunset Beach requirements. This proposal ignores the requirements in the UDO for minimum lot sizes and setbacks in every instance. Lot sizes are proposed as small as 5,000 square feet, even less than the old UDO's 7,500 square feet, let alone the current UDO's 10,000 square feet. Setbacks and side lots are closer together, and lot frontage is less than required in the UDO. This proposal also requests building height requirements greater than the UDO maximum of 35 feet for residents. Another little side part, but it impacts me directly since I'm going to be looking at it. This plan also proposes a 40% reduction to the vegetative planting requirements where buffers are created by fencing or berms greater than 4 feet high. You have the authority to set conditions on this proposal. If anything, the planning requirement should be increased for the conditional zoning request, not decreased. My concern is along Angels Trace Road, where the proposal duplexes abut the road. 2 holes of the Sea Trail Bird Golf Course are parallel to the road, and a significant buffer from whatever is ultimately developed across the street should be considered more of a screening, not less. The staff reports indicate the density is within the UDO guidelines. That's a great mathematical acreage calculation per unit. The reality from my perspective on density is this plan increases the number of housing units from the 1,034 currently approved by right single-family homes to at least 1,680 single-family and multifamily units. This is an increase of over 60% to the population density on this property. This dramatic increase to population density over what's currently approved for the property is what I find most disturbing. For conditional zoning, you have the power to set the conditions to meet or exceed the rules of the UDO, so please do so. There's no valid reason for the town to allow the development to proceed with such a blatant disregard for the current UDO. I just ask you to say no. Just follow the UDO. Thank you.
Thank you. Wes?
Mr. Chair, Wes McLeod, Cape Fear Council of Governments. I just wanted to add a point of clarification. This meeting has been noticed for a public hearing. Public hearing isn't specifically on the agenda, so it may behoove the board to point out if there's public comments in general, to have those, and then also just specifically add, just for a point of clarification, a public hearing, and then proceed with further comments. It's sort of a, trivial matter, but I think it would be important just for the record.
I don't follow.
So there's public comments that are
Yeah.
always on any meeting, correct? Whether or not there's a development proposal, et cetera. So I think that, perhaps where we are on the agenda, adding a public hearing item specifically below so that folks are by and large here for this particular proposal, they can speak during that public hearing. We're not stopping you guys from speaking at all. We're just making
What
a
do we
point
need
of
to do
clarification.
to make sure that it's legally correct
In the agenda.
Just amend the agenda.
and create a public hearing item?
Yes.
Yes, sir. And I mean, I don't think it's been noticed, and we've complied with the notice requirements, but I think just for record's sake, I believe legal counsel would agree.
So we need a motion to create a public hearing on the agenda item.
Motion to amend the agenda to add a public hearing
It's
section.
just to be official. We have noticed this for a public hearing. Everything else is legal. We just need to
The
do
motion.
this and just continue, because all those other public comments were specifically on this.
Right.
We're just going through.
So I'll make a motion that we amend the agenda to include an item of a public hearing on the development proposal in today's agenda. Does anyone second? All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Motion carries.
And then, Mr. Chair, just procedurally, you could ask if anyone has public comments on anything not specific to this proposal. If there are none, then we would move on to the public hearing and just continue as we were. That's all. Thank you.
So is there any public comments on items not related to the development proposal on today's agenda? Sir, again, state your name and address in 3 minutes, please.
My name is Mike Shannon, and I live at 478 Sandpiper Bay Drive. I did have some comments to make regarding this proposal, but it seems to me at this point that the developer has put a gag order on the people that came here with prepared comments to whitewash them into a public comment meeting. And I object to it. I think it's wrong. I think people that came here that could be concerned, took their time out to come here, should be heard. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
I apologize to you all. I work for the Cape Fear Council of Governments. I'm here assisting the town. I'm not the developer. I'm just pointing out something from a clerical standpoint. It impacts nothing at all in terms of you guys commenting. It's just a procedural item. So you guys can continue on exactly as you were. It's just you're commenting on a public hearing rather than a general public comment section.
Okay.
If you'll,
Which, for the record, gives us the ability to assemble these in a more comprehensive way. Okay, this is an improvement rather than.
If there's no more public comments on non-items on this agenda, then we can move on to the public hearing on this development.
and if Mr. Chair, if you'll make a motion in a second to open the public hearing, and then we'll get to the end. We'll close the public hearing.
Okay. So the chair will make a motion to open the public hearing on the proposed development item on today's agenda. Any seconds?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Any against? No nays, so the ayes have it. So including the earlier comments, we now will have comments on the public hearing beginning on this development. Ma'am, I think you have your hands up, and then we'll.
And let's go ahead and take the 4 folks who have already spoken on the public comment section and place that into the public hearing portion of this, okay? So that we don't have to have them come back up and do it all over again.
Right. Thank you.
My name is Anita August, and I live at 590 Coach Trail, which is in Sea Trail. I've owned property in Sunset Beach since 1992. I have been a taxpayer of this community since 1992 and a resident since 2002. I wanted to clarify here what we're looking at with the proposal from Logan Homes. Logan Homes is a local developer. They've got a fairly good reputation, and they're in business, as in any business in our capitalistic society, to make a profit. And their original proposal for developing the Angel Trace tract was made with making a profit in mind. They certainly wouldn't have come before you to get the original permit if they didn't think there was a profit to be made. So what is their motivation for coming back and asking for more? It's simply to increase their profit. And as a business, that's a legitimate concern of theirs. But what's on the other side of Logan Homes? It's those of us who have come before you today, and we represent many, many more residents and property owners and taxpayers of the Sunset Beach community. What are our concerns? Our concerns are overdevelopment, and certainly we've seen more than our share of that in recent years. Our concern is population density. Our concern is the strain on our local resources, our local town staff, the natural resources of this beautiful community, which is why most of us moved here to begin with. And our concerns are the preservation of Sunset Beach. We're not interested in the profit. We're not interested in opening up more homes for people. We're interested in maintaining the community that we all enjoy by living here. So please offset our genuine concerns about the places that we live, the taxes that we pay for these services, which, by the way, the folks in Angel's Trace aren't going to pay those property taxes to Sunset Beach because they are not part of Sunset Beach. But they expect to move here and enjoy all of the amenities of our community without paying the taxes. And now Logan Homes wants even more of those people coming in. So please consider what's at stake here before making your final decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anita.
Anyone else? Do we have people in the room back here? Oh,
My name is Richard Dickey. I live at 1611 Palomar Drive in the new development. My concern is twofold. Number one, we in our area of the sanctuary have no clear message on what's going to happen between us and the commercial area where the Food Lion is. There is a large area there. I believe that is actually within the town limits of Sunset Beach, unlike the sanctuary and this area that we're addressing today. And I would like to understand a bit more about what the possibilities and plans are for that area, because it will impact my comments with regard to the commercial use of property in this area. And so the other comment was with regard to this new development, commercial development along the highway is planned. That's my understanding, for which there's no clear plan for the road or for traffic signals or traffic flow. Already coming from the sanctuary into the highway is difficult because of the traffic, in part because of the bridge that's being reconstructed. I understand that. But we have a concern about the clarity, or lack of clarity with regard to the the developer's plans. And from my standpoint, I think that an increase in the population proposed for this area of 60% is a little unreasonable, and I would request that you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here today? I don't know who was first. Mr. Adidas, maybe.
Good morning. My name is Gene Peterman, 1296 Cotton Mill Court. My wife and I are very new residents to Sunset Beach. We really like it here, but we saw very similar things happen in our community in New England. Developers came in, tried to push things on the current town council, planning boards, etc. And while we're okay with developers making a profits, there's a bunch of big buts. First, what we think they're trying to do is pull a bait and switch on the community. We think that one plan was approved, now they're trying to come right back in and try to get more, all in the name of profit, let's be clear. Multi-homes, storage facility, it just smacks of, trying to make more money, more dense population for the community. While changes are inevitable, we do not owe the developers a blank check to do whatever they want to do by pushing things on the planning board and on the rest of the population. The increase in the number of people who could live here will mean that the town resources will be stretched from police, fire, schools especially. And while there is some provisions for non-taxation, I'm not quite sure how that whole thing works. It sounds very convoluted. It's still unclear to me how a call won't go into the fire department or the police department asking for help and they don't respond to somebody who's paying taxes like the rest of us are, to somebody who's living in the Logan Homes community. And lastly, no matter what the outcome is, I think that this should actually go back to square one. If they want to come in, try something, which is essentially a blank slate, try something new, should all go back to the very beginning, have a full Department of Transportation study done, as well as, again, another planning board meeting to hear what we have to say as community residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Someone in the back here, I believe. Yes, sir. No.
Again, Mike Shannon, 478 Sandpiper Bay Drive. I'd like to address some issues directly concerning the proposed development. This proposal, as has been said, calls for a 60% increase in dwellings on a 398 tract acre. The location is beset with public safety and congestion issues. It is also an area that will soon be severely impacted by growing development along Georgetown Road, as we all know. This high-density plan proposes egresses onto Seaside Road, which is a designated hurricane evacuation route. The original approved plan included only single-family dwellings with approximately 75-foot frontages, whereas the new plan suggests minimum lot sizes with frontages of less than 42 feet and a reduction in setbacks for front, rear, and sides. These decreases are to accommodate an assortment of high-density or multifamily residences on as low as 30-foot lots. Calculations put forth in the proposal are fuzzy to say the least. For example, 894 family homes are to be located on 320 of these acres at alleged density of 3.4 units per acre. Simple math will tell you that 3.4 across 320 results in 1,088 homes, more single-family homes that were originally proposed for the entire project. Another issue, the project is located in the Calabash River watershed and has multiple natural ponds. The proposal is to fill in and recreate these ponds as floodwater retention areas covering 32 acres. Floodwater impoundments recreated in deforested watershed areas are often underestimated due to the fact that clear cutting in deforested areas results in higher water tables and lower impoundment capacities. If you doubt this, Drive along the new developments on Georgetown Road after a storm and observe the water levels in the stormwater catchments along the road and the frantic pumping activities that ensue after the rains. Increasing housing density by almost 650 units not only crowds the homes together, but dramatically increases the area of impermeable surfaces. And that is exacerbated by the need to have more streets and more parking areas. This all leads to local flooding issues. Know also that there are 3 major egress roads from the planned community that spill out onto Seaside Road. All 3 cross the natural drainage channels of the Calabash River watershed, which will be the first impacted in the event of substantial rain and flooding. I am not against reasonable and sane development, but this project is neither. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to make a comment? Woman there, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Susan McKee, 6945 Ascension Drive Southwest in Sunset Ridge. And I'd like to speak to the board primarily on behalf of the Sunset Ridge community. My husband and I are recent residents to this area. We moved here 3.5 years ago. We had been vacationing here for 30 years and loved the area, fell in love with it that long ago, and continued to come here until we were able to relocate here in 2020, and we're very happy to be here. We like our Sunset Ridge community. It's a relatively small community in comparison to some of the others in the area, and certainly in comparison to what's proposed for the Angel Trace proposal. I agree with the previous comments that what you're getting from the developer at this point is really a bait and switch. It is not a mere modification of their original proposal when you're looking at a population density increase of 60 to 70%, as well as an additional an add-on of commercial property and multifamily units. This is not just a modification of that original proposal. And I would urge you to go back to square one, as the previous speaker suggested to you. The traffic impact to 904, I think, goes beyond anything that we could have ever imagined for this area, and particularly as the proposal suggests, at least as far as I understand, that the ingress and egress to this development is going to be exclusively to 904. Not only does that create a day-to-day traffic congestion problem, but I think you have to look at it from a safety standpoint in the event that we would have to do any kind of storm-related or hurricane-related evacuation. I think you'll have a major problem, and it directly impacts the health and safety of all of the residents in this area, not just to Sunset Ridge, but everyone who would have to evacuate through that area. I also want to endorse the comments previously made about the concerns with regards to open burning of any of the trees or bush that are taken down on that acreage. It directly impacts the safety of all the area residents. It's disturbing to me, moving here from Ohio, where we had significant enforcement with regards to clean air, that the amount of open air burning that is done in this area just generally, but by the developers, I think is appalling, and something this board needs to take a look at with regard to the original proposal, not just the modified proposal.
Time, please.
And finally, I would just say the population density increase is disturbing. It is well beyond what was originally proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Anyone else in the room here? Can we check in there? Because I hear people, but you have a gentleman comment?
Short comment. Richard Davis, 1273 beyond Marsilio Lane, Southwest. And the one thing I'd like to say is I'm from old economic school of quadratic programming, where we actually took into account environmental, societal factors and subjective factors into the equation in addition to profit. And I'd like to recommend that to the planning board. It's in the best interest of the Sunset Beach community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Jean Kelly, and I live on 1328 Minion Court in Sunset Ridge. I agree with everything that has been said. My biggest concern is infrastructure and the engineering of our roads. We've been here 10 years, and we've already experienced incredible growth, more than we ever imagined when we first moved here. We knew it would happen at some point in time. We didn't know it would happen so quickly. But at this point in time, it's like pulling out onto a highway. When we try to pull out of our development onto 904, and it is the only way out of our development. So we're kind of stuck. It's not like we've got a back way out. So I would like for you to consider having a traffic engineering study done before any approval is given, so that our roadways are adequate and safe for the residents who are already here. The other would be infrastructure. Every summer we get warnings from the water company to reduce our water usage because of the influx of vacationers, and we certainly want them to come. But if our water is already restricted because of the influx of vacationers, what's going to happen when we have an extra 1,700 homes? So I would just request that we study infrastructure and have a traffic engineering study done before any approvals given. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentleman in the gold there.
Good morning. My name is Bill Taylor. I live at 7028 Bonaventure Street Southwest in Sunset Ridge. I just want to state that I agree with all of the former speakers. I'm totally against this plan. I moved from a metropolitan city, Philadelphia, moved to the suburbs. Commercialism took it over. I moved here to get away from commercialism. I like the peace. I like the quiet. I like the wildlife. I like the trees. And I see that in front of me now, in my waning years of life, that this is all going to be taken away. And if you've already agreed to give them over 1,000 homes, why do we need storage facilities? Why do we need apartment buildings? I moved away from all of that. And in traveling in the local area, which I really love, you see more and more of that going up. Do we really need that in Sunset Beach? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bill.
Any other public comments? Do we need, yeah, check the room there. Do I need to close the public hearing or leave it open for later?
I have one question in terms of the public record. We all received petitions, one of which had 677 signatures. How can that be included in the public record? Actually, there were two, for clarification, there were two petitions, one of which included 677 signatures, the other of which included, I believe, 27.
I believe it can be received into the record unless the applicant has any objections.
It's difficult for me to respond since we haven't seen it. But in recognition of the fact that this is a legislative process and a recommending board, we don't object. We would respectfully ask for a copy.
I'll get it to you.
Thank you.
I think I've gotten,
And I guess that would apply to all email converts. My general rule, I forward ones, make sure Lisa England's name is on all of them. When I see her name not on it, I forward her one to the record. So as far as I'm concerned, all the emails that I have received, Ms. Anglin has also received. So whatever the legal mechanics are to put that into the record should be followed.
so hold on for a second. I've received this morning, excuse me, one email from Miss Anglin that had a petition or 2 attachments. I can certainly forward that to Mr. Frank. As far as other emails that I've not even seen and the volume of those emails, I mean, again, this is a legislative session, and I'm not sure that that's the proper way of getting things into the record, of just referencing emails and petitions where maybe only a few people have seen them. They've not been read into the record, and the applicant hasn't seen them. I don't know if the applicant wants them to address that as well. I think the petition's one thing. I can send that to you. I don't know about just emails out of the blue, though. Did you have anything you want to say on that, Sam?
I'm always reluctant to ask you to limit the opportunity for the public to comment in any fashion. That said, it seems only fair to us as the applicant that we would have an opportunity to respond to whatever those comments might be. And if they're referenced in emails that haven't been disclosed to us, we have no understanding of the content, and therefore don't have any ability to offer our thoughts or clarification on them.
Right.
So to that end, I guess I'd respectfully request that anything that would be included in the record as part of this proceeding be provided to us with enough notice that we might respond to it.
I mean, I have no objections, and I don't think the board will have. We can poll the board to see to having everything forward to the applicant, but it's not the board's responsibility to forward anything to the applicant. So,
Yeah, I think
do we need,
with the emails we get, because now, okay, what about social media posts? I mean,
well,
there's a
that's not
really blurry line between those kind of communications. I mean, our email addresses are available to the community. Certainly a petition, which to me is a more formal and official document, whose purpose is to get the attention and sway the public dialogue. But when we start to go so granular into emails, I'm not sure that improves.
should we get some guidance from what? I mean,
Yeah.
well, and the intent is that all of this be part of the public record somehow.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, I mean, the public hearing is specifically designed for folks to come out and share their comments on the record. You, as effectively board members and officials de facto of the town, receive comments from folks. You can read those emails, you can forward them to whoever. It's not typically customary to add those items to the record per se. I think it would be important to point out what the petition is, that's reflected in the minutes, and probably move on. This is not necessarily squashing any public comment or anything like that, but unless there's necessarily an objective to that.
So I have forwarded the petition I received this morning to Mr. Frank. I would just say this. Ordinarily, if there's a petition, then someone shows up at the hearing and tenders the petition into the record for your consideration. That hasn't happened. Same thing with emails. If there's someone that feels that strongly, they either need to be here and tender their email, or you can take whatever you've heard. If you don't hear anything that touches on something that someone put into an email, you internally can raise that as an issue and discuss it with the applicant today. But to just have as a reservoir any and all emails that have come and be put into the record, I don't think it's fair to the applicant. I don't think it's fair to the process either. I think, again, though, you've read the emails. This is a legislative thing. This isn't quasi judicial. So there may be something, whatever it is, that someone sent an email that you don't hear anything about today, and you want to address it because, hey, I've received an email that said this. Can you address that for us? But to just dump them all into the record, I think it's improper.
Okay, thank you, Grady.
He's already spoke.
Are we still in the public hearing? I mean, if these people are, wish to address,
Looks like we have additional folks that want to be heard on the public hearing.
We'll get you next.
Greg Lynch, 7032 Bonaventure Street Southwest. I guess my issue is a couple things. There was an original approval for 1,034 and you're going up 60%. That's not an adjustment. That's a new application. In terms of the infrastructure, in my mind, it's not only traffic. I mean, we get notices all the time for BEMC to reduce your use of energy. Then we've got water. I mean, we've got green space. We've got access to the beach. I mean, it's going out of control. Number one, and in terms of the petition, if I'd known the petition existed, I would have signed it. And I don't know if there's anybody here that signed a petition, can put it into evidence.
I think the petition's been received. I forwarded it to it. I mean, I think the applicant would have the right to address anything in
Okay.
that.
Then
I
I'll-
think the petition is in there, but just
All right.
any old emails.
And I understand that. And I don't know if this is appropriate because maybe a lot of us don't want to get up and speak. I mean, can you poll the group what they feel? Okay. Thought I'd ask.
Thank you.
I think we know the.
We'll go here and then back there, but.
Richard Dickey,
Yes.
1611
Are you allowing
Palomar
people to
Drive
speak twice?
in Sanctuary. Just a quick comment. The petition signed has not been shared with us in terms of the confidentiality of the petition. If the petition was to the planning board, then I don't think that it would be appropriate to share it with somebody else unless the petition signers are informed of the fact that it was to be shared only with the board. Thank you.
Well, on that point, the petition was sent to the town. It's a public document.
Anyone that hasn't spoken yet, that would like to speak? No. Anyone, you checked here, there was no one in the room?
Yeah, I checked it.
Okay.
I'll ask
Sir, if
again.
you'd like to make one more public comment, you're welcome to come up here.
Just asking again, no more.
No. If you could come, identify yourself again so we can keep the proper record.
Mike Shannon, 478 Sandpiper Bay. I'd like to know if, since we are now in a public hearing, if we need to have an attendance record. Simple question.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but we have Ms. Atkins here as secretary taking the minutes. I'm sure all this is being recorded on YouTube anyway. So I think that's addressing, and that's the whole point of having folks come up with their names and addresses to create that record.
Okay, anyone else that hasn't spoke yet? Ma'am?
Joan Lynch, 7032 Bonaventure, Southwest Sunset Ridge. I agree with everything that has been said. I think this development or this reproposal is not appropriate. But my question is about the petition. If it's already been submitted to the board, can a new petition be started or can we add to that petition? Because we were unaware of a petition that was out there. And I would assume that if it was made public, there would be many, many pages on the petition.
Now is the time to present your comments, your evidence, whatever you have in terms of the public hearing for this board's consideration.
I would,
So
po-
can we
I
start
would
a new?
point out that this is a preliminary recommendation. You will have opportunities to address more petitions to the town council. I mean, it's not that your opportunity to be part of a petition ends today.
Okay.
Mr.
Okay.
Dysinger is correct. Today is a decision by this board to either recommend approval, recommend denial, or has no recommendation either way. The substantive decision will come before council to make a decision up, down on the application.
Okay. So we can start a new petition then in,
Absolutely.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Do we need to close the public hearing part?
Yes, sir.
So I'll make a motion to close the public hearing part of this meeting. Any seconds?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any against, nays? No nays, the ayes have it. So now we'll move on to there is no old business, so we'll move on to the new business which is the conditional zoning map amendment. And I'd first like to have Chad and the planning staff or any staff for the town to give us an opening introduction and his opening comments. And then I guess the flow in my mind is then move from that to a applicant opening comments and introduction, and then to the planning board. So Chad, would you like to take the floor?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board, good morning. Introducing the application, L&H Angels Trace Holdings LLC, who is the applicant and the owner, is requesting the approval for a conditional zoning map amendment and master development plan for mixed-use development consisting of a mixture of single-family, multifamily, and non-residential uses on a 398.4 acre tract of land. The proposed development is located on the southwest corner of Old Georgetown Road, NC Highway 179, and Seaside Road, North Carolina Highway 904, and may be further identified by the Brunswick County parcels that are listed in this staff report. The conditional zoning process, staff is providing a brief overview of the process for this project as it relates to the Planning Community Development Department due to its relative complexity. Conditional zoning, the conditional zoning process is intended for a development that has a high level of certainty of being constructed, and most commonly expected application will contain a specified use or uses permitted by right or special use on a small and or large scale project. A conditional rezoning is designed to provide certainty that for Sunset Beach and more nearby residents as to which uses can be expected in a development proposal and which uses will not be present. Applicants may propose custom standards and uses for consideration in the application for the conditional zoning district. Conditional zoning districts must be considered by the planning board for recommendation and then approved by the Sunset Beach Town Council. I'll go over subsequent submittals. As we look at this as kind of an umbrella as I've described this before. As we look at the bigger umbrella, and then there are subsequent submittals that must be approved under this. All subsequent submittals, such as major minor site subdivisions or major minor site development plans, major minor site development plans are more for your non-residential uses, and your subdivisions are more geared toward your residential uses. Those must be approved through the appropriate process as well. With the new 2023 UDO, minor subdivisions, minor site development plans will come through staff. Major subdivisions, which I think is 20 lots or more, and major site development plans of 10,000 square feet of impervious or more must come through the planning board. The project consists of single-family, multifamily, and non-residential uses. The applicant has proposed a total of 1,680 residential units on 377.7 acres of land with a total density of 4.3 units an acre. Single-family, there are 894 single-family units proposed for this project with a not-to-exceed unit number of 1,000. The proposed 894 single-family units would be located on just over 320 and a half acres of land. That would yield a density calculation of 3.4 units an acre. Multifamily. Townhomes, there are 164 townhome units proposed in this project, not to exceed 200. apartments. There are two types of we have to look at this carefully together, but also as the applicant has proposed a little separate. There are two apartment complexes proposed with this application. One, there would be 288 non-age restricted apartments proposed for this project. And then as the senior apartments, as we have to look at this as an apartment complex as well, the age complexity of this thing is going to be enforced by the developer, but cannot hold any bearing on your approval, just because it's called senior apartments. The senior apartment side of this is they're proposing 192 senior apartments proposed. The total number of multifamily units proposed is 680 units on 57.2 acres of land with a total density of 11.9 units an acre. The non-residential components of this application. The applicant is proposing two non-residential sites with this application. The first is a storage facility, self-storage on 17.1 acres, and a mixture of uses consisting of a bottle shop and wine bar, eating establishment, microbrewery or microdistillery, office, general, professional service establishment. I mind you, professional service establishments are things like lawyer's office, that type thing, as we've discussed those in the past. Retail sales or shopping center located on 3.6 acres. There is as you've seen from your first site plan to this site plan, there's a religious institution or multifamily component to this. If you look at your site plan on the back end of Seaside United Methodist Church, they're proposing 4 acres, potentially something to be worked out between the developer and the church, located between the dwelling multifamily apartment sites for this tract, 4 acres next to Seaside United Methodist Church. The uses are proposed for 4 acres, and the use for those two are either a religious institution to where the church could expand if that's what they wish to do as they own the property. If not, multifamily would be moved into there. How the applicant would move that, I don't anticipate the unit number to be increased. That's not what they're proposing. I'm just saying you that would be an additional multifamily tract, which probably would increase the acre size of what some of those apartments would go into, but I would let the applicant go into that in their presentation. This will be a multi-phase project. The applicant is proposing to construct the project in 5 phases, could be more. The projected phases can be found as part of the site plan on I-2. The phase plan can be subject to change. The conditional zoning MDP requirement is to require phases to be submitted, but can be approximate. The technical review committee, the Town of Sunset Beach TRC meeting was held on December 19, 2023 at 10 o'clock a.m., not p.m. Sorry for that typo. At the Sunset Beach Town Hall, the comments from the meeting are attached as part of this report agenda packet. The public input meeting or the community input meeting, a public/community input meeting is required by the UDO. The applicant held a public input meeting on January 4th, 2024 from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Just for clarification, it did go over about 30 minutes to about 6:30. At Seaside United Methodist Church, located at 1300 Seaside Road Southwest, the applicant provided a brief overview of the project and took questions from the attendees. A full detailed report has been provided as a requirement of this applicant submittal and is attached to part of this agenda packet. Public notifications, advertisements of the proposal has been placed in the Brunswick Beacon, ran twice. Adjacent property owners located within 500 feet of all subject properties has been notified via mail, and all signs have been posted to subject property. Mr. Chair, that's all I have for right now.
Just a couple of questions and clarifications before we move on.
Sure.
This is being submitted under the conditional zoning.
That's correct.
Change request.
That is correct.
This site has a by right site plan.
That is correct. So in
that
November,
was entered under the previous UDO.
it was entered under the 2012 UDO before the modification from the 750
7,500.
7,500. Thank you. 7,500 minimum lot size to 10,000.
Right.
That by right project was approved for 1,034 homes under the applicant of Coastal Companies and approved by this planning board in November of 2022.
Okay, and then I guess a point of clarification, maybe more for the public. Under this conditional zoning change process or rezoning process, as Grady just said, the planning board has 60 days from today.
That's correct. Your time clock
And
starts
our
now.
choices are 3. Recommend to the council approval, recommend to the council denial, or make no recommendation. But in any way, it goes to the council
That's correct.
for a final up or down vote.
And just for further clarification, you have 60 days to render a recommendation to the council within that time frame.
So, and for the council, there will also be additional public meeting
Yes.
or public hearing.
They have to hold a public hearing as well.
Correct. So
And I'll
before
have
the
to,
council, there'll be a public hearing
Yep.
and then a council meeting.
That's correct.
Okay.
One point of clarification, the current plat amendment is governed by the previous UDO. This conditional rezoning application would be governed by, in terms of tree abatement, for the new UDO.
The 2023 UDO that was
Correct.
adopted into September of 2023.
Okay, so the existing plat is governed by the previous tree abatement regs.
That's correct.
Thank you.
That's all from the town?
That's all I have right now. If there's any addition, if there's any questions with more detail in the staff
will.
report, I know.
Then I guess at this point, I'd like to open the floor to the applicant. They can make a opening statement, introduction, whatever they would like to do. Actually, of course, introduce yourself and your company.
Myself earlier. My name's Sam Frank. I represent the applicant. And our role here today, as we see it, is to clarify misconceptions, provide information, and answer questions. And so, to echo what Mr. Richardson said, to the extent you have questions for us that arise out of communication you receive from your constituents or conversations over your dinner table at home or things you read in the paper, whatever the source of the question might be, we're interested to respond to it. And so please don't hesitate to stop me anywhere along the way if you have questions that you feel like we can further clarify or further address. To that end, there are several people with me today that I'd like to introduce. First, the applicant and owner of the land is an entity that purchased the land in 2023. That entity is owned by 2 natural persons, D. Logan and Benji Hardy. There is no common ownership today of the land with the entity that sold it to us. To state that more clearly, Mark Saunders does not have any ownership interest in the property today. With me today are Tim Long and D. Logan Jr., both with the developer, and obviously very familiar with the plan of development and the motivation for it. Also with us today are Matt Haley and Sophie Jones, both with Cape Fear Engineering. We suspect that you may have some technical questions for us about the details of the design, and they're here and interested to answer those as they might arise. As Chad effectively explained, the property is zoned today in a manner that permits the development of 1,034 homes. Do y'all know what we need to do to get our presentation on?
Alan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The property comprised of 9 parcels. It's almost 400 acres. The total number of homes that we propose include a variety of types of homes, single-family homes, townhomes, and multifamily homes, at a total number of up to 1,690. By comparison, the existing, well, hang on, before I get there, let me talk about the jurisdiction. Today, the property is located in the ETJ of the town of Sunset Beach, which I think you understand well. What does that mean? That means that you're responsible for making decisions about zoning and land use related to it. You're responsible for providing certain public services to it, and the landowner is not bound by any obligation to pay taxes to the town. As you can see from the image on the screen, the town surrounds this site. And although, regardless of what conversations may have happened in the past with prior landowners, I want to say at the outset that this landowner is willing to consider annexation of the property in connection with this rezoning. We recognize that the burden on the town of providing services to the property is something, and that in exchange for that, it would be appropriate if the property is rezoned as we contemplate today, to also incorporate annexation as a component of it. Right. So prior development, just a quick, how'd we get here? The land at one time was contemplated for a golf course. As you can see from the Google Earth image on the screen, golf course was in fact laid out on the land at one time. That golf course hadn't been operated in some time and is no longer effectively used for that purpose. It was once upon a time part of the Ocean Ridge Plantation master. The current approval, or the current entitled approval for the land, again, is something that was achieved by the prior landowner, is for 1,034 single-family lots. They're uniform. They're all the same. These are all single-family, approximately 7,500-foot lots. It would not provide any sort of diversity of housing options, certainly would not provide any sort of mixed use. That type of land layout is land hungry, which is to say, in order to get the layout that's currently approved by right, you really consume a significant amount of the open space and don't allow for some more desirable stormwater and the like. So what we're proposing is something completely different, right? What we're proposing here is mixed use. It's mixed across the residential spectrum. It deliberately includes a variety of housing types. It also includes some commercial uses. Why would a developer do that? I heard a couple comments during the public comment period, or the public hearing, excuse me, about the developer maximizing profits. The developer of this land is the owner of this land, just like the owner of any piece of land. Their interest is to make the best use of it that they can. We respond to market demands. We respond to what we believe the citizens of this community want and need, as evidenced by what the citizens of the community choose to rent and choose to buy. And this is exactly why we've developed the plan that we have. We think that a homogeneous layout with a single type of housing product is not in the best interest of the community. And we think that those that would choose to live in this community would choose to have a diversity of housing options available to them. And so we've incorporated just that. Now, as you look at a diversity of residential housing types, it's important to take into account that a single family home is more intense than a multifamily home in many regards. Tends to have an average higher number of people that live in it, tends to have an average higher number of cars that are associated with it, uses a significantly more broader piece of the land, and for all of those reasons creates a greater level of intensity and a greater burden on infrastructure than a single multifamily home does. I also heard some comments during the public hearing about this will be inevitably a 60% increase in population. It's not entirely accurate. We're not talking about 600 more single family homes. We're talking about diversifying the types of homes, increasing the total number of homes, but also including many small homes along with the larger ones. All right. So Mr. Chairman, just let me know if you'd like me to stop at any point.
If folks can let the gentleman speak.
Yeah.
So amidst those single family homes, that we're trying to present a diversity of options as well. As you can see, The housing lot layouts are 42, 52, 65 foot, trying to break up the monotony and provide a greater variety of types of housing to respond to the need of the citizens who live here and who want to live here. This approach is also, from a land planning perspective, far more effective at preserving open space and creating a desirable sense of place. When you use similar sized lots and you just repeat it 1,000 times, you really chew up the land quite quickly. And as you can see from the current by right plan on the screen versus the proposed plan on the screen, we've been able to achieve interconnectivity between areas of housing. We've been able to achieve a much greater and better use of the open space in the property. And so, one might say, well, why don't you just make the lots bigger? You make the lots bigger, then we won't have to deal with feeling like the homes are smaller and feeling like this is such a dense situation. When you make the lots bigger, you chew up the open space. You chew up the area that can be more effectively used for stormwater controls, the area that can be used for amenities, the area that can be used for roadways to be more effective throughout the community. Since I brought it up, let's talk for a minute about density. So when the total density here for the total development is right at around just over 4 units per acre. That is less than half of the density that's contemplated on the future land use type that you've assigned for this property, medium density residential. It's substantially less than the maximum density that would be available at the R7500 zoning in the county. All told, it's not a terribly dense layout for homes on a site this large, not by any stretch. Now, of course, to achieve what I just described, we are clustering that density. We're putting more homes in a smaller space in specific locations throughout the development. That allows us room to have more open space and larger lots in other portions of the development. The townhomes, just to talk a little bit specifically about how the houses are laid out. And I should say, this is the first time that you're seeing this, but the plan that's being presented to you is the result of some meaningful conversation with staff along the way. There's a lot of thought and care that goes into these layouts. There's a lot of refinement that happens before they reach your doorstep. And that's worth mentioning. It's something we're proud of, and it's something that I'd like to share a little bit more detail with you about. So the townhome areas, as you can see, highlighted in yellow on the screen, varying densities, slightly different home types, deliberately designed to be relatively internal throughout the community. Multifamily focused in the same area that the commercial zones are focused along the existing street corridor. As Chad mentioned, we've got 2 types of multifamily envisioned from a marketing standpoint. I realize that those are both multifamily uses, so under your code, it's the same use, but we intend for some of those multifamily homes to be age restricted, meaning that they'd be restricted to people who are 55 and above. As I mentioned earlier, there's a very different type of intensity that comes with a single family use versus a multifamily use. As you might imagine, there's also a difference in an intensity of use between a multifamily market home and a multifamily age restricted home. Commercial areas located along the existing right-of-way. What you see identified as C1 is an area that would provide a variety of commercial amenities that are not yet determined. We deliberately tailored down the list of potential uses, tried to get rid of some of the things that would be potentially more disruptive or offensive and frankly undesirable to us for the planned neighborhood. But we left a variety of uses that could be attractive, valuable commercial amenities, not only to this neighborhood, but to the surrounding community. The area that's labeled as C2, we've designated for storage. Again, we believe that there's a significant market demand, that's an area that's underserved in this section of the county and in the town. And therefore, we believe that in whole, there's a meaningful enough demand to justify that use in that location. This location, identified as OP1, On the plan, on the numbers, that's contemplated as multifamily. A relatively recent development, we've learned that we may have an opportunity to convey that land to the church, and therefore we're asking for alternative uses there. We're asking for the alternative possibility that land could be used for religious institution purposes, if in fact that transaction with the church were to work out. And so there you go. There's kind of a broad land use summary that shows how the land is dedicated to the specific uses. In the numbers there, I hope you can see what I described with regard to a clustering phenomenon, that by dedicating smaller areas of land to the more intense uses, it affords us the opportunity to use a greater amount of the land for single family lots and for open space. Open space required by the code, 15% or about 60 acres. We're about 16 or so acres over that on gross area. By the way that you measure open space in your code, you don't include buffers and ponds and wetlands, things that frankly in many jurisdictions are included as part of the open space. And so we incorporated that data here too, just because it's interesting and useful that the land includes over 145 acres of undeveloped open space, albeit some of that being buffers, ponds, and wetlands that are not accounted for in your code. 145 acres out of 400 or so means over a third of the property is dedicated to effective open space. This image shows you where that proposed open space and effective open space is located throughout the property on the proposed plan. You can see immediately that this incorporates significant buffers both between existing development and proposed new development, and also internally buffers between the different types of uses. People always want to know what the amenity is going to be. It's a nice opportunity for us to brag a little bit about a component of the development that we're excited about. It's possible that there are future residents who are participating in this process and want to see it for that purpose. To that end, giving you just a bird's eye concept view of what we envision for the amenity as of today. That's not specifically part of the land use approval, but certainly the location, the amount of land that's dedicated to it is. Today, we envision a clubhouse, pickleball courts, a pool, a kids pool, playground, pedestrian pathway, bocce ball courts, and an open lawn area. Buffers. Your UDO requires 10 feet. Our site plan contemplates 30 feet or more in every location. Let me say that again. Your UDO requires 10. We are more than tripling that in every location. We have the luxury of a large piece of land based on the cluster development approach that I previously described. We have some land that we can incorporate for open space purposes. We believe that these larger buffers are a really great way to take advantage of that opportunity. Again, to isolate uses from neighboring other uses, and also to provide something of a buffer between the internal and different types of use. Mr. Dysinger was kind enough to point this out already, and so I won't belabor it, but the current plan, the current by right plan, is governed by your prior UDO, which means it's governed by your prior tree mitigation UDO. The proposed plan, if approved, would be governed by the new UDO. For the sake of context, the old UDO required us to identify 123 or so trees on the site. The new UDO requires us to identify 720 registered and heritage trees on the site. The level of tree protection is substantially greater under your current UDO than it was under the UDO that applies to the by right plan. Ooh. Brief word about stormwater. Total estimated impervious surface is less than a third of the site, 29%. we are prepared to comply with, of course, all applicable law in that regard. And the engineer is here if you have further questions about the details. Just from a general where does the water go standpoint, we wanted to provide this image to you. The left is the current site conditions of the land. The right is the engineered drainage, again, in concept, post-development. As you can see, there are significant outfalls in the land already today. And therefore, the adaptation of those outfalls is not tremendous on this particular site. But the drainage, concept drainage is designed to do what, frankly, we're required to do, which is to spill no more water off of the site than we currently do, and to release water that leaves the site in a treated condition, more so than it is today. So traffic is an important topic, always an important topic, especially when you're talking about a development of this size. But anytime you're evaluating a change to the use of land, traffic is a consideration. These roads are NCDOT roads. The town doesn't maintain them. The town's not ultimately responsible for what improvements might be made to them. We are in the process of pursuing our traffic impact analysis, as we must be. The NCDOT is going to make us do some things to improve those roads. That's what that traffic impact analysis is all about. TIA, and again, this is in response to some comments we heard earlier during the public hearing. Forgive me if it's something you already understand. But a TIA is not an evaluation to decide yes or no as to whether or not someone ought to be able to build on their land. A TIA is an evaluation to determine whether or not that private landowner is going to be asked by the DOT to make improvements to the public road in connection with their development of their own land. We fully anticipate that that will be the case. We don't know what exactly those improvements will be. While I could speculate about that, I don't want to. I don't think that that's an accurate representation of where the facts and circumstances are. The best way to explain it is that the DOT is responsible for maintaining those roads, the one best qualified to evaluate what improvements need to be made to it, and how much they can extract from us as the private landowner in the process, and rest assured that they're going to do that. You're living through a DOT project at the moment that has an impact on traffic flow around the town. We're well aware of that, and recognize that any level of change amidst an existing period of disruption is inherently uncomfortable. From a timing standpoint, as we understand it, the Calabash River Bridge project is scheduled to be complete in about 12 to 15 months. If everything goes really, really well for us, the earliest that we would be delivering homes or commercial space to people would be late in 2026. And so whatever additional traffic is associated with the development of this land will follow the completion of the Calabash River Bridge project. Talked about the future land use plan only with regard to density so far, but it's worth highlighting. This is the controlling policy document that ultimately is the basis of your decision about whether you think this is a good idea or not to change the use of the land. Medium density residential is the way that you have identified the highest and best use of the property. That contemplates a density of 11 units per acre. Again, we're less than half of that at what we are proposing. Medium density residential is not necessarily to the exclusion of any commercial use. Anytime you can incorporate a mixed use component, it's a valuable thing. From a land planning standpoint, some commercial amenities will be utilized by some people who live in the development, and therefore you get the benefit of internal capture. The people who drive from their home to, or even walk to the commercial facility that's immediately available in the same development. The proposed commercial uses that we contemplate here are, as you might expect, oriented towards the existing right-of-way and the existing intersections. That is, from a planning perspective, the places where those commercial amenities are most accessible and therefore most useful. as you know, the current by right plan is entirely residential. And so if we don't include a commercial component in connection with this rezoning, there really are not any other good viable options in the town for commercial uses along those thoroughfares. There's a slide just demonstrating the point I just made. Thank you. I appreciate your patience with my explanation. Again, we are first and foremost interested to answer your questions, clarify anything that we can. We're proud of what we bring before you today. There are countless details included in it that I'm sure that I haven't addressed. Please don't hesitate to ask. Myself, the developer, and our engineers are here and interested to answer those questions.
Thank you. What I'd like to do before we get into questions and answers, maybe quickly get some comments from the board members. Just general comments, maybe a few minutes. I want to see how you would like to proceed, and then we'll decide from there. Maybe we'll start with just Sybil here and go down that way.
I'm not real sure I understand what you're asking me, but
Just any general impressions, and then
I understand. I understand the public's concerns, and I hope that through this process we can get those concerns addressed.
Gary?
I have 14 concerns here, but I will not bore you with all 14. But
please,
I would urge strongly you to go back and reconsider the amount of units that are going on this property. I'm totally against the 5,000 plus or minus square foot lots. I do like some of the senior things that you have in there, the multi-purpose dwellings. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with the commercial aspect of it, but I think that reducing those single-family home lots down less than 7,500 square feet, which is by right, I think is a mistake on the applicant submission to the board. I think that we spent many days with Sea Trails and working with them on their projects. And I think there's going to be some give and take on our part. I'm not speaking for the balance of the board, but I think there's got to be some on your part as well. All right. So,
just generally, I have lots of questions, lots of concerns, and some conditions I'd like for y'all to consider also. But just generally, I like the mix of uses. I like the mix of different product type. I do agree with you that it does lend to more open space. It does lend to lower impervious surfaces in a way because you can cluster them. I am concerned about the density, the overall density, number of units. But I'm okay with the commercial. I'm just not happy about storage right on 904. Generally.
Okay. Yeah, I have basically four major concerns, one of which is the density, which I think we'll go over in our question sections. The second, I do have an appetite, and have always had an appetite for mixed-use development, but the storage locker is a non-starter for me. This is the Gateway Overlay District. It's the entrance to our community. We have huge issues right now in presenting a good face to Sunset Beach. That's not a good, and a storage locker is not a good way to come into our town. So I would strongly oppose that. The third is, in terms of the traffic issues, the unspoken thing here is, what are we going to do about Angel Trace Road? That would offer a number of solutions in terms of the traffic patterns. And I think it's worth banging the table and suggesting to Logan Homes, who does not own any part of Angel Trace Road, that's my understanding.
That's correct.
To form some sort of LLC consortium with the other developers that do and find a solution. I'm not suggesting that it's easy. But if we're going to add any number of new homes whose only egress is 904, I think that is probably the most significant concern that I've heard in terms of the public feedback here. This plat is going to be developed, okay? And I think there's some good ideas in what you've presented here. But those are the three things that are top of mind for me in terms of what we need to accomplish. And I think the fourth thing is, does it make sense for the planning board to whittle this down, as we did with the previous conditional rezoning request? Or would it be better for us to propose what I think are some pretty major changes and afford you the opportunity, rather than us coming to a decision either today or in subsequent meetings, and resubmit based on the suggestions that we propose and the feedback that you've received? So those are my
Thank you.
comments.
So likewise, I guess where I stand is, generally, I agree with the diversity of housing. Not to give you a long history lesson, but I was here during the discussions on the changes to MR3 before your time. We spent many meetings and time increasing the MR3 single family lot size from 7,500 square feet to 10,000 square feet, which is where it is now. And as we discussed earlier, the previous owner, not yourselves, under the wire of that change, got their site plan in to get the by right site plan into the town. So that alone is sort of a background history. Now, conditional zoning, I guess the way I view it is to allow the developers to come up with a plan that, again, I would try to achieve a win-win type relationship. Obviously, you're trying to get a win for your company, but we're here trusted with trying to get a win for the citizens and residents of Sunset Beach. Okay. Now, I agree, and if you look back at the history, I was one of the folks that did not really like the change, the increase the lot size, because I believe we do need a diversity of housing in Sunset Beach to allow what generally is a senior, hate to use it, a somewhat mature resident base to allow to graduate up and or to different housing as they age. You know, from a large single family house maybe to something smaller or to whatever their choice is. And I like some of the things you proposed here, but my overall feeling is on the single family size, and maybe on the townhouse side, as some other folks said, you are way over what I would consider too dense. The lots are too small. You're going to have vertical style houses because you, on a small lot, you got to go up, which in my mind does not give the diversity of housing our citizens will need. There's nothing here. Now I understand the land problem, you know, to build like a quad style ranch that's single level, which may be great for seniors, doesn't get your end the best or most profitable use of land. But my major concern is on these lot sizes are way too small. The setbacks that you're asking for in order to fit a house on teeny lots. I mean, our current side setback is 7.5 feet. That gives you 15 feet between structures on the minimum. You're asking to take that down to 5 or 10, basically, is too close. That is, these 40-foot lots and 10 foot between the houses, in my mind, are city lots, or maybe at best near ring suburban lots. It's not a country lot that I think the citizens of Sunset Beach have expected to be here. So your plan of diversity and offering different things, I think, is fine. I just think you way overshot the target on how many residences you're putting on the commercial and also non-apartment side of the project. There's just, we can go through them, we can beat the math to death on how you calculate units per acre, but you can just look at it and see that it is a tight, clustered structures in a long area. So the setbacks, I got a big problem with reducing the setbacks side, front, and back. I think you got a 10-foot setback on the back you're asking for. I mean,
It's really tight.
that's my suburban home in the metropolitan area had a larger backyard than that. So now you're going to say, well, that pulling that lot line back gives you an open space over here. But some people, in my mind, their own backyard is part of the open space. Okay. And then, I mean, I went through this thing and I started picking out where are the 5,000 square foot lots, where are the 40-foot lots, and there's a lot of them when you start drawing in on where they're at. And I cannot in good conscience put 40-foot lots, 5,000 square foot lots in Sunset Beach. So I'm kind of going where Richard, I mean, we can go through, I'm somewhat not objectionable to your apartments. I'll probably will be some serious discussion on heights, which you're not going to like. And maybe buffering, and I'm not sure why you positioned that senior building where you did close to the road, but that's a whole nother story. But I'm not overall objectionable to adding some multifamily like that, or either folks that don't want a big house or want to downside out of a big house. They're just an apartment or condo. And also, we're not doing this in a vacuum. You got to realize there's a lot of condos or apartments just got approved to go in not that far from you. So I'm not sure how much the market can bear, but that's your problem, I guess.
Sure.
On the commercial side, I think most of the C2 part of what you call, C2 commercial. I mean, it's fine. I'm not sure that little building in the corner there gets access, but we could discuss that in detail. And the buffering, just as somebody else said, for those who are here for previous, I agree. The storage facility, especially the outside storage facility, is a non-starter. That's not what we want on the front. We have previously approved recently a enclosed one off the in Angel Trace in the back, and maybe if you had like an office building in front and something in the back, maybe we can work on that. But well, we'd have to see what you come. But my biggest problem is, and I can't see, I'm only 1 out of 5. Oh, you got to only convince 3. Okay, I cannot move this right now to council with a approval or recommended to approve with the amount of single family homes on those small lots with small setbacks. So I don't know. I kind of go with Richard. I don't know how to go forward. I think your conceptual thought plan is okay. I just think you squeezed too much into the available. I mean, and I don't know whether your owners want to comment or say, can you go back and increase, if obviously we would like to see 75, minimum of 7,500 lots here, because we've already approved that. So there is some okay, we already gave this parcel this allowance, and you might have gotten me to have, if you had some cluster of smaller lots and then an area of larger lots, maybe adjacent to a neighborhood that already has larger lots, such that the average kind of comes out in that range. But I just think you're way too small on that now, and I don't know how to get there. Maybe some staff and stuff can help me to have you guys say, well, we could take a second look at this and maybe we come up with something different that assuages all of that. And I understand the traffic thing is always a big issue, and you're going to deal that with NCDOT. I guess my only question is that level of service. Is NCDOT level service D on these intersections? Do we know?
Ask the question one more time.
Levels, the LOS for these. NCDOT apply level service D on those intersections around in town?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so we have to do some, look at what level of service we can require. And then on stormwater, 25 years is rain is not sufficient. And I would propose we look at a 100-year rain on this property. Some other folks, Jerry I know, is more at 50-year rain, because the more we build, water is a bigger and bigger issue. And I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that rainfalls could be large here and fast, and they need to be dealt with, because once all the houses are booked and you guys go on, the residents are stuck with the water. So I think we need to be looking open-minded to conditions of 100-year rain or maybe 50-year rain. We can hear from your engineers on that, on how to handle that on the property.
Can I suggest as
Wait,
a way
you had
forward?
a comment here?
I am truly upset about the setbacks more than anything, and the height. I think they are really way too tight. And living in the ETJ and being the ETJ representative, I understand that you may bring it into the town, and that's all fine. But I think to make it a better community by larger lots, places where people want to be and have homes and raise families, maybe is an area that is being neglected, and maybe something that would be more, I mean, it would be worth more financially, because you would be having larger lots, larger houses, and it would be a place, it would be a community, place you want to be. That's my overall look when I look at this, because as I said, the setbacks really bothered me, and the lot sizes. So I hope we can work something out.
Richard?
Well, I was going to make kind of a suggestion in terms of process. I think if the outcome of this meeting is we're going to enfranchise Logan with new information about what, now that we've learned from the public comments and the comments on the board, so that they can go back and resubmit, rethink this application, and come back to us. Maybe the idea should be is that we should do kind of an informational download in terms of what are the things we would wish to see changed or included in what you resubmit. And table this application, so we wouldn't take a vote today on deny, approve, or suspend, and afford Logan the opportunity to come back, given the feedback we're getting from us today in the community. Is that a fruitful process, or what should the next steps be?
Jerry?
Yeah.
Oh, Wes, you have a... Please.
If there's an opportunity for me to respond
Yes.
to your comments, I'll take it. I'd be
Well,
grateful for it.
Let's have procedure first, and don't go too far.
Absolutely, affording the applicant an opportunity to answer questions. I think whatever you decide, just remember that you need to have a consensus of the board. 7,500 square foot lots, do we all agree, et cetera? 50-year storm, do we all agree, et cetera? So the applicant is here, and you can talk to them about their position on, whether or not they want to revise the plan, whether they want to seek a recommendation as is. I think that they will probably provide that feedback to you. But those critical items, I think that you guys should come to terms with on if there's things that are deal breakers or critical to you to be considered, lest there be a recommendation for denial. Does that make sense?
I think we're saying the same thing. Kind of.
I don't know. I only think question in my mind is how specific we have to be, because if my mind, I'm not looking to target specific number, but I just want a preponderance around a specific number, and then give them some freedom to show that some diversity is beneficial. Does that make any sense?
In terms of the overall lot size?
Right.
Okay. And so
The
again,
setbacks may be a specific number. I'm not, the 7.5 feet and the 25, 20 or something to the back or whatever it's supposed to be. But as far as the lot size, I hear their claim of some diversity, provide some benefit. So I guess, can we say the mean, the average, the preponderance around, and is that enough guidance to them then?
sure. I mean, remember, ultimately, this is going to go to the council,
Right.
presumably, for their final decision. So, you guys coming to consensus on some of these items is important, to provide that feedback as a unified board on those. I believe there's stormwater and density setbacks type issues are,
Mhm.
if unless I'm mistaken, those are the primary
Yeah.
issues at play here, correct?
Right.
And then the commercial
And height,
along.
there's probably the height issue.
Okay.
Height
So,
issues, traffic issues.
So again, as Grady alluded to, there's recommendation for denial, recommendation for approval, or the option to table this pending further revisions. And that's where I'll probably, unless you have further questions, turn it.
Mr. Chairman, may I take a moment to respond to
Sure.
some of the comments
You
we've
can
heard?
have as much time as you want.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Well, first, from a procedural standpoint, we would choose to, if we are going to change things, adapt our current application, not to withdraw it and submit again. Big picture, there are two ways to get this done when you're a landowner, when you need the consent from a town to change the use. One is to ask for the whole world, knowing you're not going to get it and expecting to compromise. And two is to refine a plan in a significant way and put your best foot forward. We absolutely have done the latter here. You have a future land use plan that contemplates 11 units per acre over this entire site. If we wanted to propose 4,000 apartments, we would be proposing something that's consistent with your policy documents. This is a significantly refined and tailored plan so that we made sure that when we presented it to you, we were presenting a win-win for the town and for the developer. We are offering to annex the property into the town of Sunset Beach. That is no small thing. You're talking about, by our best conservative estimates, tax revenue increase of $1 million per year. Significant income that could be utilized to address many of the types of infrastructure problems that you're dealing with today that don't have anything to do with our new development, and some that would be additionally burdened by our new development. The total density here, 4.3 units per acre, it's just not that much. I understand. I certainly appreciate and hear that this is different than what is currently approved and different than what people are accustomed to in the town of Sunset Beach. But I also recognize that we are below 40% of what your policy document says you want in terms of density. And I don't think that anybody wants to see 4,000 apartments. That's not a desirable layout for this site. That's not a desirable layout for the citizens of the community. What we need is what we believe the community needs is exactly what we proposed. The opportunity to have single story walk-up quadplex options or townhome options or single family options or multifamily options, all available in a similar community, so that once people settle in and become a part of it, a community that they're proud of indeed, that they can move from one home to another within the same community as their life transitions. That is exactly what we've thought through and considered in the well-reasoned plan that's been presented to you. Now,
Can I just interrupt for one
you
second?
can.
Because I'm about to jump out of my chair with this statistic about the land use plan. There's a couple of issues that we need to raise about the land use plan. First, that land use plan was supposed to be amended every 2 years. It never was. That land use plan in its text suggested that within 5 to 7 years, the land use plan had to be completely revised. So we're pulling a number from 7 years ago to justify what, in terms of its strategic intent, the land use plan specifically talks about, which is Sunset Beach wishes to spend its development resources in the pursuit of single-family homes. That's not an exact quote, but it's close. So we keep hearing this number, 11.6 and this, and yes, in terms of the math incorporated in the land use plan 7 years ago, those were the numbers. But I don't think they reflect the sentiment of the land use plan, the strategic vision of the land use plan. And I think what we're trying to suggest is, and what we've done in the UDO, 10,000 square feet in MR3, that's 4.3 units per acre, okay? Doesn't reflect in the land use plan, okay? But the trend that we've tried to impose here, both at the council and in the planning board, is, and MR3 has been the crux of it, okay? And it's befuddled us, is really more in line with a preponderance of single-family homes. Yes, I think I'm in favor of mixed use, but what you've proposed here is way in the other direction of what the strategic intent of the land use plan was in 2017. And had we amended it and been in the process of revising it now, would probably reflect more stringent mathematics in terms of how MR3 should be utilized going forward.
If we can't rely on,
Nancy?
if we can't rely on your current policy document as the benchmark for what you want us to achieve, what are we supposed to rely on? Are we supposed to guess?
My suggestion is that to quote Winston Churchill, there's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. You're cherry picking a very specific number that was arrived at 7 years ago that at the time probably seemed like a sufficient number. If we were to write a land use plan today, I guarantee you that number would come up for discussion and would be significantly revised. The way we've revised the UDO is evidence of that. Now, I'm not trying to be excuse my French, but what we're trying to hopefully arrive at is a proposal. I mean, Logan Home, you guys are a great developer. I've looked at your developments in some of the other areas, Highlands, some of the things that you've done in Wilmington and Ocean Ridge. So I was kind of surprised. I don't think there's a development that I've seen that you've done that has single-family homes at 5,000 square feet. Compass Point is about 6.8, 7. Some of the other developments are quarter acre, third acre lots. So my one question is, why of all the things that you could have proposed here, were the lot sizes reduced so significantly? And I think I understand part of it, but I think it's really out of sync with where Sunset Beach is and where we want to be headed. And I would love for Logan Homes to come back in here and give us something that's more in concert or more consensus with what the community wants and the planning board is kind of expressing, but it's not reflected in this document yet.
May I respond to Mr. Dysoner's question?
Please.
Thanks. I'm going to give you a short answer to why we would propose it this way, and then I'm going to invite the applicant to come up and tell you a little bit more.
Great.
The short answer is we're proposing exactly what we believe the market wants. We're proposing exactly what we believe the citizens and future citizens of Sunset Beach would choose for their living.
Mr. Chairman, he has been quiet and letting everyone say their piece. He's entitled to the respect of this audience, even if you don't like it, for him to be able to speak and answering these questions without the murmurs and the interruptions in the background.
Thank you, Greg.
Sorry.
Thank you. And following that brief answer, let me invite D. Logan up to answer your question in more detail about why, the vision behind why.
Fantastic.
Mr. Chair, if I may, can I real quick? All right, so I want to point out two things that are in the land use plan. There are two different types of density numbers that are reflected in the land use plan. One would be residential detached, which would be single family, which proposes this at 5.8 units an acre. The other one being single family attached, which would be your townhomes and potentially your multifamily areas, would be 11.6 dwelling units an acre. When it comes to the implication of the scheduling of looking at this overall, it clearly states in Chapter 10 of this is that initiate and review goals, policies, and contents of this plan every 2 years. I've been here 3, all right, going into my 4th year. Have we updated the UDO? Yeah.
Yes.
That's where I thought we needed to start with this.
And I agree.
All right. So it also says in here that update the land use plan every 5 to 7 years to address changes in dynamics, population growth, economic development, and housing needs. All right. That physical year is somewhere between 2022 and 2024.
Correct.
So we're well within that. Where this adopted in 2017, we're still well within that. This is also the governing land use plan that the council has adopted for Sunset Beach. So until we adopt another document, this is the guiding land use plan for Sunset Beach and this application. All right. Do I know when I plan to proceed in updating the land use plan? Sometime between not this budget year, but the following or the one after that. So I wanted to put that on the record as we move forward.
Great. Mr. Logan?
Thank you for having me.
And may I just say, welcome to Sunset Beach.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Been here many times before, but I live from Wilmington, so I don't know if you need my address. It's 2042 Trinity Avenue in Wilmington. But I'm going to make it real quick, guys. I'm going to click through to a couple. Whoops. I don't know what I did there.
You want to go back?
Sorry about that. Do we not have our pictures of the houses at the end of the... Here we go. Yeah, if you guys don't mind, I don't know if this is part of your presentation, Sam. Maybe it got cut off, but I'm going to click through a couple of these vision boards here just to give you guys an idea of the vision we see for the community, for the design, the layout. Sam, don't let me get myself in trouble, but obviously this is a community where you have folks that are relocating from the Northeast or coming back from Florida and towards the later years in their life. I don't know if that's politically correct to say, but we feel from our market research and demographics that this is a largely community that's going to be on up there in age. So most folks in that realm are not looking for giant yards. They're not wanting to mow grass anymore. They're looking for homeowners associations where they take care of the exterior landscaping, they take care of the exterior maintenance, etc. So we have geared a lot of the homes that we've proposed here towards that style. And naturally that means not giant yards where you're spending tremendous amounts of dollars paying to landscape and maintain the yards. So having said that, I'm going to click through. I didn't realize we had the clubhouse in here, but here's a couple ideas for kind of the lifestyle. We would be doing a nice pool, a nice low country themed clubhouse. And I'm hoping I can get to a picture of the duplexes here shortly. It's not clicking. Well, there we go. Now it's working. A little bit further. Thought we had it. Well, I thought we had a picture of Saltwater Palms. Is anybody here familiar with the community Saltwater Palms behind the Publix in Ocean Isle Beach?
Yes.
We built we called them paired villas or duplexes, what have you. Very nice style homes. They're now selling in the mid fours on up to mid fives. That is a perfect example of what we see the ideal buyer in this type of community. It was largely folks who were, retiring, moving down from the Northeast. It's the HOA maintains the yards, they handle the exterior landscaping, etc. If you look those up, they're anywhere between 5,000 and 6,000 square foot lots. But I wish we had a picture. As you drive through there, it's a beautiful setting. I wish we had those on here, but I encourage you guys to look up Saltwater Palms on our website, logandevelopers.com. Hopefully the folks who have seen it can vouch for the beauty and the aesthetics of that community. It's got a very functional exterior, but that would be a really good representation of the type of homes that would be built here. So I was coming up hoping that I had a picture on there. I apologize we don't have it, but I do encourage you to look up Saltwater Palms, please.
Thanks.
And they're about 5,000 square foot lots. Is the short
Planning
answer.
board members also asked, why go to a smaller lot size and a variety of lot sizes that are small. And I gave the general answer that that's what we believe the market conditions demand. Is there anything that you would choose to add to that as to your specific types of customers and what you're seeing in the market in terms of what people want?
Yeah, I mean, feel like I kind of tackled that already with it being mostly folks that are retiring and wanting, smaller yards, not as much to maintain. And a lot of times, the homeowners associations where they maintain a townhome community or a paired villa community that offers a luxury to folks that are not really wishing to deal with the maintenance anymore. Economics, I don't know if you want me to go into that. That obviously plays an effect on it. When you have shared party walls, the cost is not near as expensive as it is to build a standalone home on say a half-acre lot. It is what it is. Certainly, that's all I know to say, Sam. Just call it like I see it.
Right.
Hopefully that was helpful. Thank you, guys.
So I want to be clear about what I said earlier about process. We remain very interested, curious to hear the refinement of your comments and take into account how that might lead us to adapt our plan. We just believe that we're within parameters that allow this to move forward with amendment to the pending application as opposed to needing a new one.
I guess my question to you folks is,
Yeah.
are you saying I heard from your earlier statement before gentleman spoke that this is your best shot at it, okay? Which is almost saying there's no changes coming.
No, I'm telling
Okay,
you.
I just want to make sure that's not what I heard or what you meant.
I'm telling you that this is a very well-refined plan that's deliberately got significantly less density than we believe is supported by your current policy documents. But no, of course, we're interested to hear your specific comments, and we're interested to have the opportunity to huddle up, after this meeting amongst ourselves and evaluate what we can and can't do.
And again, to Mr. Lawyer's thing, I think the board, and someone will jump in, is interested in the diversity, the mixed use, whatever you want to call it, as we said before. I just think you're too tightly packed. You can achieve the same things. I mean, someone doesn't have to take care of their yard, whether the yard sits on a lot that's 7,500 or one that's 5,000. That's a homeowners association plan. But once the structures are tightly packed together, the setbacks on the side and the front and the back, etc., that's permanent and not changeable afterwards. So I guess
May I ask about a couple folks make comments about self-storage being undesirable, and it sounds like that's an optics. It's not the use itself; it's the appearance of the use from the thoroughfare.
No, it's a little bit of both. It's both.
Okay. So self-storage in itself is a relatively low intense use. You don't get a lot of traffic. There's not. But there's not.
Yes, there's a bad optic, but it seems to me that this particular location seems like there's got to be a better use for it than just. I said this yesterday in a meeting, and I will be careful how I say this now. It appears there's a self-storage center here because the houses are going to be small. People are going to need where to put their stuff. So I don't think that's what you were thinking of, but it just seems, one, previously we went to, the only one it came before us was they had an outdoor one. We forced them into we negotiated into an indoor storage only. And there's one not too far from here that just got built.
From here.
It over in Calabash that looks, it's an industrial building, so it's not that great of a look. This one, let me check Chad. This is going to have to comply with the architectural standards, right?
Yes.
From the overlay?
It's in the overlay district.
That's correct.
Correct.
And they're
So-
aware, and the applicant's aware of that.
I mean, to me, that's just a low use for that, a low commercial use for that area. I'm not against the commercial use. It just now, whether we come to some compromise, whether there's an office building or something on the front and maybe some of the back might be an indoor storage. I'm not trying, I can't tell you what to do. It's just, I'm not happy.
Yeah, I think you were kind enough to answer my question, whether it was about optics or use, and you're telling us it's about both. And
It's about both, right?
So if we were to have a restaurant in that location, significantly greater traffic impact, potential noise impact, more desirable in your mind than a self-storage use.
Could be, yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't rule that completely out.
Yeah. I don't have any idea what else we might do there, but I appreciate you clarifying your comment.
Right.
Thank you.
And the question that I have too is, part of the issue with mixed-use development is to keep traffic inbound. It doesn't do us any good, commercial development of 904, if the person that lives in this community has got to drive on 904, make a right, and then go get in the restaurant. So are you going to perhaps propose that there be egress from within the community to these commercial plats?
Yeah. Are we there yet?
One road is.
We know that we'll have pedestrian interconnectivity, of course. And when you think about the context of mixed use, certainly internal capture, reducing the number of trips, and the current development is part of the equation. But the greater section of the community is also part of the equation. Part of the reason we believe commercial is valuable in that location is not just to serve this new development, but to serve the existing neighborhoods that surround it. And they're not all going to have the benefit of pedestrian interconnectivity. But even if they're taking a short car ride to get to the hardware store or whatever it might be,
right,
that is a shorter car ride than they would currently take to get to the hardware store. And so there is some incremental benefit. Today, we don't.
My issue is I want to avoid them having to make a right-hand or left-hand turn on 904.
I get it.
And the whole, in mixed-use development and other communities, I mean, that commercial development is embedded in the community. Now, I get it, and organically, that's not tough to do. The challenge we have in Sunset Beach is when we try to do mixed-use development, it has to be pasted on after the fact. You have an opportunity to include it in here, okay? And I think your community would be well served by a small commercial development in the development that would allow them to come to the coffee shop, come to the restaurant. In Sea Trail, where I live, unfortunately, it just closed, but we had a restaurant within Sea Trail community, hugely successful. All right? Those are the kind of mixed-use development that I see as, when we're talking about mixed-use development, I'm more comfortable with that being in, as long as somebody can get to it from out going on 904, that's a win. Okay?
So today, we have pedestrian interconnectivity. We do not have vehicular interconnectivity.
All right.
I appreciate your comment, and we'll take it to heart.
Great. And I mean, this storage locker would be fine on Angel Trace Road. Okay?
Okay.
All right? Now, again, we have to deal with the issue of Angel Trace Road.
Yeah, I meant to respond to that earlier, and I didn't. May I take a moment to do so?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So, goodness knows, we would like Angels Trace Road to be improved so that it'd be available to us.
Right.
We have the right to use it if it gets improved. We don't have the power to improve it. And the idea of having a zoning condition that puts us at the mercy of a third party is not something that's tenable. If it was within our control to say, well, we have a right to buy it, or we have a right to own it, or we have a right to improve it, rest assured we would have long since offered that.
Have you picked up the phone and talked to Robert Hill? Have you picked up the phone and talked to Bill Clark? Have you picked up the phone and called Mark Saunders?
Yeah.
And say, hey, listen, we need to get everybody in a room. And I mean, it's a 1.5 mile road. What is it going to cost? $4 million? Is that?
I have no idea what the number is.
Stuart, you have some expertise.
The answer to your question is yes, as to some of those conversations. The bigger picture answer to your
the
question.
topic today is this development. The road is outside of our purview.
I'll relent.
Right.
I did, and forgive me, this is just my miss. We heard the comments about burning, and we didn't incorporate yet a condition with Chad on the proposed conditions related to it, but we're open-minded to one. Your ordinance requires 50 feet, which historically apparently hasn't been enough, and we don't expect that you'll amend your ordinance before we get to that point. We're willing to accept the responsibility to be at least 500 feet from any occupied structure for any debris burning, legal debris burning activity on the site, and incorporate that as a condition.
How does that, hold your thought.
Sure.
Can you explain, Chad, how that works?
So my understanding of it is the UDO would require a state burning most of the time when you get permits from air quality and permits of the like. Am I wrong, Sam, on that?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. So I know that It's the county, so the county would require.
So the county would have to issue a permit. And we don't know what the county,
That's correct.
what the county requirements are.
What the town requires 50 feet. In addition to whatever legal requirements you're required to get a permit. I'm saying that as a condition on the zoning, as an additional layer of regulation, we're willing to be 500 feet away from any occupied structure, which ought to be far enough.
I think the experience of this community in the sanctuary burn is 500 feet. I mean, and I understand it's a major concession, but my home is more than 500 feet from the sanctuary burn, and my wife, who is borderline COD, was majorly affected by it. So the solution to me is to find an alternative means of removing that debris from the site. Other developers in this community have figured that out. Okay.
I hear the request. What we've offered is what we're prepared to offer today.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, do you all have other questions for us or?
I do.
Oh, Stuart, sorry, go ahead.
A bunch of questions.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
And welcome to the planning board.
Yeah. Let's see. On the Angels Club Drive connection, it's not shown connecting across the creek over to the amenity site. Angels Club Drive is the one right next to the church.
I'm going to invite Matt Haley to respond to
Okay.
your question. He's our civil engineer and more educated about the details of the site plan than I.
Yeah, so that you're not showing that road connected back into the development.
That is correct. The plan would be to basically remove the existing connection and leave that portion of the existing road in place to serve access to the church and to the age-restricted or senior apartments, and provide a secondary access to the larger multifamily site. But all of the residential development would be served from new points of access on NC 904.
Okay, and the reason you don't want another point of access into the subdivision would be?
I mean, I think the thought was, to protect, the church and, I mean, if you look at the church and you're very familiar with it, was married there. There is kind of the service area of the church, there's playgrounds, and really just trying to avoid having a lot of new traffic going by the existing facility with little separation from the existing road.
Okay, so if that road doesn't connect, how do the seniors and the senior housing project get to the amenity site?
They would
You're having to
they would
force them.
have their own separate amenities. So on the site plan for the multifamily, there would be a centrally located amenity area for the multifamily, and then I imagine the seniors would have kind of their own separate standalone amenities there on their parcel.
So that would include a pool, a clubhouse?
I'd have to let the developer speak to that. I do know at the larger multifamily site, there's plans for a clubhouse and a pool. I can't speak to the specifics on the senior, but
Thank you guys for having me back up. Typically, a market rate multifamily complex would have its own internal pool, clubhouse, fitness center, pickleball, what have you. In an assisted living area or senior age-restricted multifamily would be the same case. I did want to answer your question in one different way on the access, and point out that the current approved plan by Coastal actually only has one means of access on Highway 904. I think we're actually proposing 3. So it's a substantially, I don't know if you can say safer. I don't know if it's okay to say, but there's going to be a lot less pressure for 1,000 homes going through one access point than what we're proposing through 3 different access points. And the church, additionally, if you think of Sunday mornings when they're coming in and out of church, that's going to be separate from our community. So all that traffic would not be compiled on top of the single family homes entering and exiting.
It's just that if that was connected, then the people inside your development that want to get to church could do that without having to get on 904.
That's true. That's a good point. That's good. And hopefully a lot of them go to church.
Yeah, I would hope so.
I did want to point out one more thing before I sit down. the walkability, we didn't highlight it in the plan, but there's a beautiful stream that runs from north to south down through the middle of this property. It's pretty wide. We're going to highlight that feature. It's got some really nice substantial trees on it. And you'll notice a lot of tree save around that area, but we're wanting to put a really nice walking trail through there that goes from the southern part of our community all the way up to the northern part, which happens to be where the commercial potential out parcels are, whether that be a coffee shop, a restaurant, what have you. Our intent is to have that walking trail connect from the southern part of the community up through the amenity site. It's like a 7-acre amenity site, I want to say, and provide walkability all the way to that commercial site. So wanting to encourage folks to get out, get active, and walk directly to that commercial. And, selfishly, that's a tremendous amenity to us. If we can get a nice coffee shop or brewery or restaurant, what have you, that would be a huge amenity to our community to have walkability straight to that site.
Can that be shown on the plan or added
I believe
to the
it
plan?
is. I thought the walking trail actually is on there. Okay.
Yeah, it's not. I don't believe it's on here.
Apologies. Yes, that walking path should be on there. Yeah. And to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, we're happy to, I'll let Sam or you guys work out the exact structure that we go from here, but this is not our way or the highway. We're not changing the plan one tiny bit. We are certainly happy to have conversations one-on-one, work through staff, whatever it may be. Like Sam said, we feel very confident that we're meeting market demands and meeting what we thought, would be accepted in a loving way here. But we're happy to sit down and have some conversations and hear everybody's ideas and do our best to incorporate them. So we're not averse to conversations and working through things in a proactive way.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, I got another question about open space.
Yes, sir.
All right, so
That's probably good.
the UDO says open space shall have a minimum width 50 feet. Y'all revised that on your plan to say that the open space will have a dimension of 50 feet in any one direction. So in my mind, the UDO was written so that all the open space areas had at least 50 feet, a 50-foot dimension. And what y'all are trying to say is that no, if it's 1 foot long and 5,000 feet wide, that we meet that. No, because each open space area has to be 5,000 square feet. So I think the intent of the UDO, and I'm so glad the town attorney just left. I think the intent of the UDO was that an open space area would have a minimum of a 50-foot dimension in any direction.
Right.
Not in any one direction.
Aren't you saying that's what we wrote?
No, y'all have done, so.
Because what is length versus what is width? Is it north or is it,
Right.
parallel of the street?
Well, that's the
You want-
tricky part, but, so what I did was I measured with the scale areas in here that don't have 50 feet measured.
In any
Everything
one
that's highlighted doesn't meet the 50-foot requirement.
You mean in any one dimension?
In any, let's say, no, in all directions, should meet 50 feet in all directions. I mean, you
Oh.
can't,
That would be very limiting, wouldn't it? I mean, if you've got
It means an open space is not just a strip.
Yeah, I'm going to let Matt speak to this, but if you were to say you need 50 feet in every dimension, that would be very limiting. It would constrict the land plan. I mean, the change, I assume, is designed to allow us to maximize the opportunity to capture open space throughout the community, regardless of the layout of the thing.
Stuart, do you
wanna add
have
more
the
color to that,
actual
Matt?
article in the
I
UDO?
do. I have it right here.
Okay.
4.15 D1.
So it says all open space shall have a minimum width of 50 feet, except for walking trails, bike paths, sidewalks. And then each individual open space shall contain a minimum of at least 5,000 square feet. So if it has a width it doesn't say 50 by 50 width and length. It just says width of 50 feet. And then it has a minimum area of 5,000 square feet. Then I think that would meet the intent and spirit of the ordinance.
So it can be 50 feet in one direction and 10 in the other.
And as I talked on the phone to our consultant yesterday, he says, as long as the land is not deemed unuseful, and it meets 50 feet at the road, and 5,000 square feet in overall general area, then I would say the intent of the spirit of the ordinance is met.
Well, just as an example, if you have an area that's 10 feet by 5,000 feet long, that's 50,000 square feet. But it's just a strip of 10 feet. It's not really usable land.
I
mean, what you just described sounds to me like a trail, right?
It could be, but I guess I'm getting back to the UDO. Why did they put the dimension of 50 feet in the UDO if we're going to let you do 1 foot by
50 feet,
5,000?
I can't speak to that, but I recognize the ambiguity in the word width, and I recognize why it's more desirable, the second piece of language that you proposed that's on the plan, because what is width? It doesn't really.
Right, it should have said 50-foot dimension in all directions.
Be substantially more restrictive than what your code says today. And I'm not going to, I don't know if I could speak to whether I think that's a good idea or not from a policy standpoint. I do recognize that the language on the site plan is better because it clarifies the UDO. Instead of saying width and having everybody scratch their head as to what does width mean, it clarifies that it means 50 feet in any one dimension.
Can I ask you, Stuart, in your findings, I mean, I couldn't see your coloring there.
Yeah.
I mean, your findings, are there just a few spots where it's not very wide, or?
No.
I mean, we're so far over the mark on open space anyway, does it change?
So it's basically, there are some, I say, because it's mostly behind the lot, so it's because of the short
behind the
setbacks.
lots, yeah.
You're designating strips behind the lots, which may be traditionally part of somebody's backyard, is now part of the open space because the lot line ends, right?
Yeah, and I would say that most of those strips, just from the little bit that I could see, the highlighting there, are adjacent to and around stormwater ponds facilities, which are excluded from the true open space calculation per the ordinance, but they are open areas and provide, amenity and recreational opportunities for the community. So
Stuart, in your just quick opinion, if the setbacks to the rear were more similar to what is in the UDO, the 25-foot or something close to that, would many of those strips disappear because the lot line would be pushed back? So this lot issue and setback issue
I think it's
also affects.
I think it's interrelated.
It's interrelated, but there's an interrelation because of the smaller lot and the fact that you're proposing, especially on the rear, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, a 10-foot, that if that lot line was pushed back to 20 or 25, what the code is now, those little strips would not be open space. They'd be part of the owner's lot.
Yeah.
Is that
It
fair?
gives us,
So
it gives us something we can evaluate.
Right. So the in some cases here, you may achieve a more acceptable rear setback and lot size by by having these narrow strips incorporated into the owner's lot.
No, understood that's
Right.
part of what you're suggesting we do is make the open space smaller and the lots bigger, and specifically along the back side of the lots, if it's possible, to increase the setback.
Right. So there is sort of a circular interrelation going here. I guess
I still
do you feel, or do you
I still think the 50 feet means that it should be 50 feet in any direction. I mean, in all directions.
I'd have to.
And I'm hoping the town attorney would
It doesn't.
would help me on this.
On the latest reading, it doesn't say that. I would have to pull our UDO audit to see how we did talk about this. I just don't remember right now.
I just don't understand.
I know we didn't want.
Why is the 50-foot dimension in there if
it's just one direction?
If it's just any one direction? I mean, how do you get 5,000 feet if you don't have 50 feet in any one?
I also have the author of the the UDO present, if you would like to ask him the spirit of that as well.
Wes, can you provide any background?
That is a rare luxury.
Thank you. I think it would be wise if you calculated the amount from your perspective per the interpretation that would not, in your mind, qualify. Do you have a number?
I didn't. I mean, all the shapes are so odd. I don't.
Sure. Okay.
Because they run all the way around the stormwater ponds, and but I'm thinking they need to be 50 feet wide. They're 30-foot wide strips that run around there, and that's where I think the width was intended.
Yes, I mean, there's an allowance there for some of that open space to be used for walking trails. It specifically calls that out. I think that, this is a conditional zoning request, so technically they're allowed to provide whatever open space that they want, or they can seek an exception to it. That being said, I think, it just would be important for us to go back, talk to the applicant, and get a better sense on, how many of these spaces don't comply with, in your interpretation, aren't less than 50 feet. The intent of the open space is generally to be usable, and I think from a general standpoint, have larger areas and not necessarily per se strips, with the exception of those walking trails or pedestrian paths, connection paths.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Just to hopefully clarify and not further confuse, those are not parcel lines. So that line between the open space and the stormwater is not a parcel line. It's only there because we needed to calculate open space that was not a stormwater pond.
Right.
So the whole thing is a parcel that will be owned ultimately
Right.
by the homeowners association or the like. And I just want to make sure that's clear, that the line that creates that 30-foot dimension,
But it's in the calculation.
it's really solely there for the
Right.
sake of calculating. We're
Right.
counting the square feet
So
of
it's
open space versus
you're,
stormwater.
you're using those narrow strips are in the 76.32 acres.
Is that the total open space number? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
So that number may be somewhat less, even though you were over.
We're way over.
Right. So
yeah,
that might be still a non-issue unless we.
we
so
need time. We
I
need
guess
time
we
with the
need
pencil
to.
and the plan to be able
Right.
to answer that. Yes, sir.
Right. So some of these narrow strips may be, even if they're eliminated, it would just reduce that open space number. You still might be we don't know. We can't tell at the moment.
That's correct.
Right. Go ahead. Oh.
Has your question been answered? I'm sorry, I had a coughing spasm, so I didn't want to have everybody here
Did we cause that?
hear that. No, no.
Um,
I mean, I don't know what I missed. So have you had your question addressed, or do you need me to weigh in on it?
Well, I don't think anybody's weighed in heavily on it. I mean, my reading of it is that it should have 50 foot. A 50-foot width is what it says. But in my mind, if you're going to do a strip, that's 200 feet long and it's 30 feet wide, that's 6,000 square feet. But I don't think it meets the intent of the 50 feet wide.
Well, I understand what you're saying. The looking at the language here, it says all open space shall have a minimum width of 50 feet. It doesn't say a minimum of 50 feet on every side of it. So there's two ways of reading it. There's your way. There's the way that I look at it. Just now bringing it up, I think staff would say that they believe the applicant has gone above and beyond meeting the spirit and the intent of that definition and the requirements for open space. I originally was kind of leaning your way, but just looking at the totality of the statement, if it satisfies a minimum width in one direction, I think it satisfies that definition. But I no offense to the drafter, I think it's susceptible to two definitions, two interpretations. And so then I have to revert back to what the general law is as the landowner, zoning restrains the landowner's ability to make free use of their land. And so when it comes to zoning ordinances, the courts will go with the interpretation. If there's an ambiguity, they're going to side on the side of the owner of the land rather than the municipality in the case of ambiguities, because of the fact that you are restraining their uses and the things that they can do on their land. The law says you got to be specific. And if there's two definitions, then the owner gets the benefit of the more generous definition or
But we
interpretation.
could, through this process, if we get a negotiated agreement.
Of course, that's
on
why we
open
have
space, it can be placed as an acceptable
You've got
condition.
conditional zoning, and there's two requirements: making sure that you don't violate law by requiring some condition that would discriminate against a protected class, and also making sure that the owner is willing to agree to the condition.
That's great.
So in your open space notes, number 2, would you be willing to amend that to say in at least one direction, to say in all directions?
I don't know. We need time with the plan to evaluate that. I know we've got a lot of cushion, but I don't know on paper what that, how that would shake out. So we need an opportunity to evaluate it.
Okay.
We'll certainly take your suggestion to heart. Thank you. It's a good note.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. So if you're agreeing to annex, voluntary annexation, then all the roads would be town roads, correct? Be public town roads.
Yes.
Because the UDO does not allow private.
Yeah. I don't know that we know the answer to that yet. Are you talking about
That would
whether or
be-
not they're dedicated, whether or not you accept them, or the quality of
The
construction?
UDO does
the
not
specs?
allow private roads in town.
Okay.
So if you were to build this in town,
Yep.
presently, the roads would have to be built to the proper standards. I meant inside town, being inside the city limits of town of Sunset Beach. You would have to build the roads to the appropriate standard, and then at the end of the inspection period or whether they would revert to municipal roads.
If you don't allow private roads in the town and we annex, they will be town roads.
And built the town specs.
I believe either way they're built as town specs.
That is correct.
So they're built to the same, which is the 2.5 compressed over 8 or whatever it is. Either way, they're built to town specs, but inside the town, then at the end of the process, when they inspect them, they would be then reverted or dedicated, whatever the proper terminology, and to become municipal roads, which I guess means to the homeowners in a homeowner association, they're not responsible for the maintenance on those roads. They become municipal town roads for maintenance or Powell bill stuff or whatever goes on in North Carolina.
Instead of being directly responsible, they would pay taxes to the town, who would in turn
Well,
maintain the roads.
Correct.
Yeah.
So back on that issue.
Continue, Stuart.
The UDO says that all those streets would then be designed to the NCDOT subdivision manual, right? So in that, unfortunately, I used to be a professional engineer, so sorry, but some of the alignment and geometry on the roads found at least 8 intersections that don't meet the NCDOT guidelines, and I found at least 8 centerline radii that don't meet the centerline.
Have we started the TRC review process?
Not for the level of detail.
That would address those notes. Yeah. Okay.
So I guess my comment is that if some of these issues are taken care of, I think it's going to change the layout, and it may give you opportunities to make some open space areas bigger, or it may give you opportunities for more walking trails or something like that.
Could be. Yes. So we have not had TRC level review that would vet out those details that you noted. I don't doubt that you're accurate in them. We just haven't gotten that far in the process. And so
Well, you drew a plan that's got square footage of every lot in there, so
we
you
have
got
to.
a lot of detail.
We do.
Right.
Yeah. So in connection with the land use question, the question that we're asking and you're considering today, things like the square footage dedicated for specific purposes is required. The technical requirements of the design, the size of the stormwater facilities, the layout of those facilities, the layouts of the road and the like are reviewed through the TRC process and at a staff level. And that will happen to some extent in parallel with the zoning, but also largely following the zoning. Nonetheless, I appreciate you drawing it to our attention. It's something we'll evaluate.
So I'll to clarify what you're saying, if they would need to view that standard and make sure the roads comply.
I think what you need to hear me say probably is if you approve that plan as part of this rezoning and the roads don't satisfy your technical requirements, we still have to satisfy the technical requirements. There's nothing about the zoning approval that would exempt that.
That's correct.
That
Yeah,
strict
and you more look at that in detail at a preliminary plat level.
Yeah, but so we don't know the impact of that before making this decision, and we probably should.
Yeah, I think this is something that has to be
Right?
resolved.
I mean, it's the impact.
if the impact further,
I mean, if it impacts the plan,
if the impact further restricts them to what they want to do, they would have to comply or start the process over to work out details that would help them get to where they want to do. And that's where you have unit counts that up to a number, not to exceed a number, density at a number, not to exceed a number. Yes, you got to think you're looking at it as more of a macroscopic right now, where the further more submittals you get, the more detailed and micro you get into this.
This is about usage and seeking approval of a rezoning, a conditional zoning of uses. They can't even get to, say, going to TRC review for a commercial establishment because it's not zoned that way. So this is only governing the uses. The actual cinder blocks on the ground, asphalt on the ground, all of that comes later once they have the uses that they can pursue. You may not be able to build all these units after you go through the review and going through the curb cuts and the radius and all that other stuff that's well beyond my. But this is about whether or not on Charlie 6 plot of property can they put a particular use there, assuming that they meet all the other technical requirements that go with that zoning district.
Okay.
I agree with everything Grady just said, and also appreciate Mr. Jones bringing that to our attention. It's possible that it impacts our layout, and so it's something we'd like to look at.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Another question for you. Sidewalks. And I know I'm right on this one. Town UDO states that if you have a subdivision over 50 lots, sidewalks are required on both sides of all streets. And the plans in here clearly state there's a note that says you're only going to do it on one side, and they're drawn on one side.
That's a deliberate modification. That's correct.
So basically, you're proposing less than what the UDO requires.
In this context, and also more than is approved by right today.
Can we approve less than what's required in the UDO?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at the lot sizes and the setbacks and the height requirement. I mean, that's part of the conditional zoning review as well.
All right. So in the package that I was handed, 43 says conditional rezoning applications may not be used to vary from the general standards of the ordinance, including but not limited to, and one of the options is street design standards. So would the sidewalks qualify as street design standard? I guess I'm concerned that I understand, uses and setbacks and, we can vary all that, but if the UDO requires sidewalks on both sides, do we have the right to allow them to lower the standard for what that street?
I think when it comes to street, where you're talking about street design standards and coming out of the TRC review as well, that goes into how it's installed as far as base, inches of asphalt, inches of base, and stuff like that. Yes.
Okay.
I didn't hear you.
Sorry, say that again.
Pedestrian requirements are different than street requirements.
Ultimately, it's a pleasure of the board on whether or not you want to allow that exception. If it's a by right subdivision, to your point, absolutely required. This is conditional zoning, so that sort of choose your own adventure, if you will, to some degree. And pedestrian facilities would be a separate item, but certainly staff can clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's under a separate heading in the ordinance.
So it's not part of street design.
Yes, sir. And there is also an allowance in street design for you to modify or request to modify the street design standard beyond the minimum requirements of NCDOT. NCDOT, there's a third-party review fee, and it has to be approved by the fire marshal. But we've already addressed this. I mean, that's sort of beyond the point. The applicants have chosen to provide a basically more specifically detailed plan than otherwise would necessarily be required. As Grady alluded to, typically it's more of a conceptual basis, understanding the entitlements rather than, how much base course is going to be provided on the road. That's a little bit further down the path, but great question.
Okay.
So just to be clear, at the end of the day, we would be approving sidewalks on one side
That's correct.
If we don't change it.
if we don't change it.
Correct.
Ask for a change.
George?
Okay.
All right. Knocking down through my questions. This is pretty specific, but Road 28 was stubbed out in the direction of the sewer treatment plant on the south side.
Okay.
And there's actually a road stubbed from an adjacent subdivision that's north of that, that's stubbed out to Angel Trace, and y'all are not connecting to that road. Can I get I don't understand, why are we not connecting to that street stub?
Yeah, so the location of the road stub 28, I guess it is, I don't have the plan in front of me, was strategically placed in the vicinity of the treatment plant because that's going to be a primary utility corridor to get sewer from our site to that Sea Trail regional pump station where it'll ultimately be pumped to the Brunswick County treatment facilities.
Okay.
That was the rationale, is to try to minimize the length of utility corridor and to minimize any utilities that may have to run parallel down Angel Trace Road.
So you're aligning the street right of way and the utility corridor.
And we basically have our road stub directly across from the treatment facility, which is the end location for our new utilities, so that we didn't have to stub differently and then start running a bunch of utilities down Angel Trace Road.
The pipes run.
Yes, there would be a near perpendicular crossing versus a longitudinal or parallel crossing. Yep.
Well, what about the road that's planned to be stubbed from the adjacent subdivision? Could we not get connection to that? I mean, interconnectivity is a big deal.
Yeah, I don't know that we have those plans. We certainly would be willing to take a look at that and, in conjunction with our plan and see if there's, a better alignment. But, the focus of our planning was to coordinate utility connections that we knew we would need. So
And if that were connected, it would offer egress through the pre-existing development up to Old Georgetown Road. Is that correct?
There's a road stubbed right here.
Okay.
I don't know whether that's a public road. Does it exist today, the road in the neighboring community, or is it planned?
I think it's
Planned.
Okay. And is it
Not
in the
exist.
town or is it in the ETJ or not?
It's in the town.
in the town.
Okay. So it would presumably ultimately be a public road as well.
Yes.
However, you would then have to cross Angels Trace Road. Then it comes to the question, do they have access to
I thought they said
Cross
they have access to Angel Trace Road. Do you have an
Yeah,
easement
they
to
do
it?
not
They could
own
still stub.
You have an
Trace
easement
Road.
to it, right? You
We
don't
do
have an
not.
easement to the road?
Come on.
Yes.
Most of the conversations with the previous seller on that, we're in 100% support of Angels Trace Road, or was it Angels Club
Angels
Drive?
Trace
Road,
Road.
Angels Trace Road.
Yeah.
We even plan to have a road connection to Angels Trace Road. We'd love to see it open, but it's totally out of our control. I know there was a meeting that was set up between the town, I think Sea Trail, the previous owner, and that meeting never came to fruition. But anything that we can do to help push that along, we're in total support, but our hands are kind of tied. We don't have any control. We don't have easement access. We have no authority and control other than pleading and requesting to help get that road open. But I want you guys to hear it from our mouths. We are in total support. We would love to see that open, but not much we can do about it.
Well, might I suggest, because we've had the adjacent developers stand here and be in total support of Angel Trace Road. So I hear a lot of total support. It feels like, why don't you give Robert Hill a call, right?
Why?
And
Well, that's up to them.
turn that total support into some action.
Okay, Stuart, continue.
Um,
Don't tell him I told you to call.
I think that's all my
Think it might be on the
questions, but I have a few comments or potential conditions for you to consider,
Okay. All ears.
which are very different. But one would be affordable housing. There's ways, not necessarily low-income housing, but affordable housing, because I'm thinking about workforce housing. Wouldn't it be nice if the people that worked at the senior housing place could live inside your development and walk to work? Again, it takes another car off the road. But there's ways to do workforce housing that's, it gets kind of legal and all that kind of stuff. But if you could.
Yeah. So I guess one comment and one question in response to that suggestion. First, a diversity of housing options is inherently organically more affordable. That's a big part of the reason for doing it this way.
Right.
That a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom apartment or a duplex home costs less than a single family home to live in. And that's not something that requires any sort of government interjection to control rents or the like. It just simply is. And that not only is desirable for the reasons you described, but we believe it's desirable from a market consumption standpoint. We believe that there is a shortage of organically less expensive homes in this area of Brunswick County and in Sunset Beach. Second, with regard to a potential condition, would you mind telling me what parameters you would encourage us to consider? That is, are you thinking in terms of rent control? Or are you thinking, if so, what would the qualification be to be entitled to rent for less, and what would the rent rate be based on? Do you have thoughts in that regard?
Well, other communities are handling it different ways, and some of that is rent control, and some of it is control of who can rent the space. Or, people have done things where they've limited to police officers, fire personnel, things like that. That, again, we're trying to get some of these people that work in town to be able to stay in town. And teachers, all these people struggle with housing, and I hate that we keep pushing them farther away. So if you can just look into it, that's all I'm asking at this point.
Absolutely. There are absolutely legal parameters on what we can and can't do in terms of saying who's allowed to rent and who's not. But I understand your note, and I'd like a chance to evaluate that and see if there's something we can propose that makes sense above and beyond just the general comment I made about organically more affordable products.
Okay.
Yep.
And I would like y'all to consider a larger block of open space that could be more like natural habitat area. I see lots of strips of open space, but I don't see big blocks of open space. We're going to displace a lot of animals.
Wildlife habitat. Okay, I understand.
If it could be, they're not going to habitate a 30-foot wide, strip. But if there was a 5 or 10 acre block that could be more natural habitat with a nature trail attached to it, or something like that.
Understood.
That's what I'm getting at. And I would I think Pat had it in his staff comments too, but I would like for y'all to preserve all the heritage trees. You know, y'all didn't discuss the heritage trees at all. But if we could use a 1 foot for every 1 inch diameter.
Well, they've submitted to a new drawing and table listing out the heritage trees.
The survey that identifies them.
That was added to the latest packet. It wasn't the original one.
Yeah.
So they're required to follow the UDO on heritage trees and regulated trees, such that well, generally there's an inch per inch mitigation plan on site, not off site, and then obviously preservation where they get in the heritage trees.
But they're allowed to take them down.
So
UDO.
I think Mr. Jones' point is tied to Chad's proposed condition, which is preserve all of the heritage trees.
Mhm.
Our wish is to do exactly that. Those are assets that make the community better. We are absolutely on board and prepared to design the layout of the roads and the layout of the lots to avoid any hardscape or building envelopes interfering with those trees. The one explanation I need to offer there, though, is site work is necessary in connection with the horizontal development, as you probably well understand, and heritage trees won't tolerate changes to site elevation at their location. You can't put fill in around, you can't bring the grade up 2 feet, you'll kill the tree. You can't bring the grade down 2 feet, you'll kill the tree. And so what we need to satisfy ourselves before we absolutely commit to that is that either that's possible or that we can make a commitment to do exactly what I described, avoid building envelopes and hardscapes and allow for the possibility that if we have to mitigate a heritage tree, it's solely because of the need to grade the site accordingly.
All right. And if you could consider possibility of planting and maintaining at least one native pollinator garden.
What's a native pollinator garden? Forgive me.
So a pollinator garden is basically a cleared space, no trees, and you plant it with flowers, basically native flowers for pollinators to come in. We struggle here because the beach winds. We struggle with pollinators. And so if we could do something to encourage that. I mean, you've got pollinator gardens are not very big. We're talking size of this room or something. So you have areas in here that are big enough. But it might be a nice asset to the community as a garden club might take over maintenance of it or something like that.
It sounds like a reasonable, for the first time in my career, I'll consider a condition related to pollinator gardens.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. And I'd like for y'all to consider
Yes.
at least 5% of the single family homes to have a solar PV system, 5 kilowatts.
There's some federal regulation related to that, isn't there? I don't know which way it goes, whether you're compelled to allow or compelled not to. Understand your point. We'll look at it and learn more.
And again, I think this goes back to land use plan, the UDO, trying to encourage, preservation of natural resources. And so if we're going to put more rooftops, if we can add some solar.
So just for the sake of discussion, I can't make a commitment without talking through this with my client, but the rooftops that we will continue to own are much more in our control than the rooftops of the homes that we're going to sell to individual families. And so if we were able to achieve the goal that you're striving for through either the commercial buildings or the multifamily, would that be similarly acceptable to you?
I think that's something we could talk about, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
One other thing on solar is that we found over the years that if you provide a conduit for future solar for single family homes, which is like a $10 conduit just from the meter base up to the roof, not through the roof. So if somebody adds solar 10 years from now, that conduit's already there. All they have to do is cut a hole in the roof and they pull that cable right down.
Okay.
It's a really cheap thing, but it saves in the long run. Just something to consider
Are you suggesting as a construction practice or as a zoning condition?
as a zoning condition.
Okay, fair enough.
And could we possibly talk about the TIA being completed before we approve this or vote on it?
From a sequencing standpoint, my understanding is it's not realistic, that we've got to get through the entitlement process well before we would get to a completed TIA. Matt, is there anything that you would choose to add to further clarify?
That's fair. I mean, the decision here is going to dictate the traffic counts and everything that DOT is going to look at. So, kind of,
You will have the trips analysis done before, because that's the first.
There have been preliminary trip generations performed based on the plan that was presented today. But before that TIA can be finalized and submitted to DOT, we need to have a level of comfort with what the final approved plan is, the allowable maximum density, so that when we submit to DOT, there is zoning in place for all these uses, and we have an idea of what that analysis that's being submitted to DOT.
But you could
needs to
provide
show.
the trip generation analysis, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We could have our traffic engineer provide the trip generation for the plan that is before you now, and then subsequently, if there's any changes or adjustments, update at that time. But going through the full TIA process with the state and getting that TIA approval, I think would be out of step until we can get through the zoning.
Right. So if you could provide the trips and generator analysis, that would be helpful.
Yes, I think we can do that.
Thank you. I assume you want to know, compared to 1,034 single family homes that are approved by right today.
It didn't cross my mind, but you're free to do that.
May I offer just a quick comment about that topic?
Sure.
Thank you. I appreciate the freedom to offer this. The reality with NCDOT road improvements is this is what it takes to get the improvements done. There has to be a private party seeking a driveway permit who the DOT can hold on the hook to contribute some money to build the turn lane or the like. As most of us have probably experienced. If you just call the DOT and say, this road's operating at a level of service, a D, I want you to do something about it, they'll take your notes and they'll write it down and they'll put it in the stack. The development activity is what it serves as the catalyst to truly get those improvements done. And we know full well that the DOT is going to hold our feet to the fire and that we're going to be responsible for something. That's what the TIA will ultimately tell us. In the meantime, we're glad to share trip generation numbers with you.
I have a quick question on this. The NCDOT is typically going to require turnouts of some sort, correct?
That is one of the things they often require.
Or deceleration lanes.
Yes, sir.
In reviewing this, I think the AADT study, 904 has been designated as potential improvement. Thank you, NCDOT, by 2035. That improvement will increase that road width to double lanes both sides. Now that's what's proposed. Similar to what they're doing to, 211 down to Southport or whatever that road is. Does this plan anticipate that possible incursion? Because you're butt up against 904. If they widen it, it's going to impact setbacks. It's going to impact a lot of things that you're getting ready to build.
I don't know that we know the answer to the question yet, but I do know that when we go to DOT and seek the driveway permit, if they've got future plans for some of our property, they're going to take that into account in the conversation. Probably won't take the land from us now, but they will probably have something to say about proximity of our improvements to the right of way.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Stuart, is that it from your end?
One last small thing. Could y'all add a condition that all your lighting would be consistent with the UDO lighting standards in place at the time of subdivision or site plan submittal?
We would be bound by the terms of the UDO at the time of the approval of it.
We had a little technical issue with not getting our lighting standards in the UDO. So,
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. If you have specific lighting standards that you think will become part of the UDO 5 months from now, and you'd like us to consider incorporating those as a condition, perhaps you could just share the details with us. and then we'll be glad to respond.
I'll share that. Give you a heads up. It's looking to be adopted in March.
Okay.
So, yeah, we recognized it pretty quickly and realized that it was left out.
So then it's likely a moot point by the time
It is, but
this
you
zoning
would have
will be approved.
permit choice on that, technically.
Okay, I
So
understand. You're
we'll-
right. Thank you for pointing that out.
And it hasn't changed from what you probably already considered.
It may be a moot point because we're more than happy to.
So I
to
guess
live with it.
like a previous
Perhaps you
one,
could share it with me.
Share
Yeah,
that
I
with
will.
them, and they would.
Thank you.
A condition would be agreeing to that
Yes,
language.
yes.
Okay, thank you, Jerry.
Stormwater.
Yes, sir.
What is it planned for right now? Year
To treat it. Yeah, absolutely.
no,
Yeah. yeah.
hold back. How many year flood?
Come on up. Pat.
25. And
Yes, the 25-year, 24-hour storm event is what's been currently contemplated in the design.
there's been movement on the county to increase that.
I'm sorry, what was the
There
question?
is a movement within the county to increase that from 25 to, there's one subdivision that had to go to 100-year flood. Would you guys consider upping the stormwater?
I think there's a lot of analysis that would have to be done because these are, events larger than what we've looked at to date. So the point's taken to explore a larger storm event, but just not at a position to know what that impact may be on the plan as currently contemplated.
I agree with Jerry. We have the 25-year rain every 2.5 years. So we certainly a condition of 50 man. I mean, the county on Bayline in Calabash imposed 100-year rainfall in 24-hour period, and they're actually, obviously, there's future discussion at the county commission to make that permanent across the county. But so I guess at this point, we're asking for an increase as a condition from the 25 to a higher number, and I guess here you're whether 50, what the impact of your 50 or 100 would be on you overall.
So our response to that is we'll absolutely look
Right.
at it. I would offer just a quick comment about that too, though, that stormwater management is not flood mitigation.
Right.
Stormwater management is about slowing the flow
First flush.
of water
Yeah.
so that it has time to be treated before it leaves the site. And so if you increase the ability to treat stormwater on site, you also decrease the speed at which that water can leave the site. And this is the lawyer might as well be a layman offering that explanation, but it's for the benefit of those who might
But
be
it's
in the
clear.
room who might comment to you.
It's kind of clear in the neighborhood now that quick release of all that water onto roadways, ditches, and stuff is overwhelming the system.
And that's what happens today because there is no system, right?
Right, so-
whatever we develop on this site, we will have to design, build, and treat stormwater in accordance with applicable law. And understand your comment that you'd like us to up the ante and build bigger. We'll evaluate whether that's possible.
Thank you. Sybil, anything else?
No, I think you've done a very nice, I think you've been very helpful. And I think you've shown us maybe what we're missing in what your intent is. And I thank you for being here.
Thank you, ma'am.
So,
Mr. Chairman, should we interpret the comments that we heard from each of the planning board members as the comments from the planning board?
I'm going to pose that question to my staff and consultants to see what.
Thank you.
I mean, I'll just go on a limb here. I think what we'd like to do is table this so that we continue this discussion. I don't think we want to, unless someone jumps up now and yells at me that we want to make a decision today. I think that's not true. We want to, but what is the proper procedure to get to the applicant the concerns? Do we have to create some sort of document? Can they just go back and listen to the YouTube and hear them all?
No. So to the applicant's point, I think it would be helpful, Chad, do you have a list of the conditions that have been at least proffered by individual members? Do you have a summary of that?
I have notes that I've taken. I don't know if there are any specific
So-
conditions have been approved or accepted.
So what I would recommend is that Chad or Grady provide a summary of those, and then you all, if there are any items on there that you are not agreeable to, For example, I saw some heads, shaking about the solar. I think is all of the things that have been discussed, is everyone in consensus of those, with perhaps the exception of the solar related items?
Well, I'm in consensus with the solar related.
Okay, all right.
So I guess what we need to do is somehow come up with a list that we all
That
can
is
look
correct.
at.
You need to provide a summary subject to a motion to the applicant would be my recommendation, and that for them to further consider, they could, and I'm not going to speak for them, they may choose to ask for a recommendation today. I don't know. I'll turn that over to them. But that way they've got some official direction. And then I'd also add that, having staff facilitate your general summary in terms of incorporating that into plan revisions would be the way that it would work.
So I guess the way unless they want a decision today,
do
they're
you all want to
caucusing.
answer
with
about
it.
You're asking me what we prefer?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just answer that
Yeah.
directly. Thank you, sir.
It is to me, unless somebody stops me.
So I really appreciate your process here in that it allows for exactly this. It allows for us to take your comments back and adapt our plan accordingly, share that with staff, let staff evaluate it, perhaps discuss it with you one-on-one about details. I think that allows for a much better end result than compelling you to make a recommendation today or compelling us to withdraw the application and bring it back. That's exactly what we would like to see happen. In the interest of doing the best we can with that, I would be grateful for cohesive direction from the planning. There are things that many of you said that I can rely without you telling me on being cohesive. You would all like to see larger single family lots. You'd like us to reevaluate whether that's possible. I get it. But there were also some comments that were individual, and I don't know yet whether that's the will of the planning board or the will of one member. And so I know it's a little bit cumbersome, but if you're willing to refine that list and provide that direction, we'd be most grateful for it.
We're going to get to that now.
Thank you.
Would you like me to?
Yes.
I've got some notes I have taken that came under the heading of potential conditions or observations, most of which were by Mr. Jones when he was speaking, if you want me to go down those.
Well, I guess I'm not going to stop you, but I guess, do we have to come up with that list exactly now? Does it have to be voted on? Or can, we exchange a document over here in the next 5 days or something? Do we have to come back and then vote on it? Or if we exchange a document between Chad or yourselves and the planning board, and we edit that document, say, okay, this is at this point, our sort of list of things that I'm to consider, and then it's acceptable to send it to them, or do we need some sort of vote on the document?
If I can interject here,
please do.
I would make the recommendation that we hammer it out right now, because in my experience in the past 6 months, it's that staff has not been able to capture the spirit of what y'all have.
So
all of the conditions that y'all have proposed, and there have been some outlining things. So I think between Grady and I, we do have about 2 pages worth of notes here.
So would it be?
I just want to make sure that it's voted on potentially and solidified in this meeting. That way, there's no ambiguity or subjectiveness coming out.
So I
of
guess also to the fact that we reserve the right to amend, add, or change anything on that list that prior to.
I think what the applicant needs is some general consensus of broad stroke things to address for it to be tabled today, come back at the next meeting with those general bullet points having been addressed.
I think what Chad's saying, he would like to distill that down to a piece of paper today. And what I'm kind of thinking of, should we take a recess and then Chad with your assistance or distill these notes down to a piece of paper? Because I also don't like us doing things orally and not seeing it, all of us seeing that if we're going to do a piece of paper, then I want to see the piece of paper.
I don't think there's any way that we can hammer out specific details of. Yeah. I think what we can do is give these bullet points of general topics of concern to be addressed by the applicant. I don't know that we can sit here and look at their site plans and say, in this track, we need you to reduce it from.
No, I don't think that's what we're saying. We're saying general conceptual changes to the plan or again, bullet points might be fine as a list, but that we all then read them and say, yes, those bullet points is what we should.
Yeah, and everything
That's
that
all
everything that we've discussed here has been included. Now, whether they respond to it or not,
well, that's their choice.
That's their business. But I would want to make sure, because we've had a broad range of topics in here.
So on their behalf, I think you should take a look at these parcels, the ones we all kind of agree on. We don't. The storage unit, correct?
But I think that would be a bullet listed. Is
Bullet.
that we're
Bam,
not
bam, we got one done.
that we what?
All right.
One
One's
down.
done.
Well, no, but I think all I'm saying is we're trying to distill this down, I think, to a piece of paper that we can give to the applicant in a fairly reasonable short period of time, such they can work on if and any changes they want to make to come back to us before. If we table it, we table it to the next meeting, correct?
If I could speak,
Yes.
I think pretty much we all know what each other's thinking, and I think we are all pretty much in line with the same things. I don't know that it needs to be a big meeting and a big consensus because we're still in the preliminary part of it, and we've told them the things we don't like and why we don't like them. They've come back with their side of it, but now let's all take it home and chew on it and see what comes out from it. I don't think we need to make it a big deal.
Purposes of edification and clarification for everyone here, citizens included, because they would like, I believe, a summary of the bullet points that Grady and Chad have for them to share those. I believe it will take not long. And then the board can say, yes, those are those items that we recall, or yes, plus this. And then that will be provided at a later date. This is the first phase of this. So, but we need to get direction, or you all need to provide that direction to these folks as one board.
Yeah, and I think it does need to be documented in some way.
So again,
how we
my
do that
suggestion
is really the question.
would be to take a short take a recess, and somebody tell me the period of time, 20 minutes or half an hour, for Chad and anyone else to type up bullet points or somewhat conditions or whatever suggestions, and print that out, and so we can take a look at it and then say, yes, we want to table it, pass this to the. Okay, so we're going to take a 15-minute break. That's you, and a comment? You okay? I have a motion, make a motion to take a 15-minute break for staff to work on this, and we'll reconvene then at 12:25. Do I have a second?
Is that going to be enough time? That's my only concern.
I got a thumbs up on that.
That's enough time, Chad? Okay, so I would only amend that motion to say let's reconvene at 12:30, and
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No, the ayes have it. We'll reconvene at 12:30. Thank you. Currently 12:30, so we recess has ended or reconvene the planning board meeting. And where we left off, the staff has prepared us a list of bullet points to provide the applicant in this case. All board members, have you had a chance to review?
Yes.
Any changes or comments on these bullet points?
I'm not sure I see it here, but I think in consider increase to single-family lots and larger setbacks.
First one.
One. Also, the reduction in total plat requests in terms of reducing the number from 1680 to a smaller number. I don't see that on here. Am I missing something?
No.
Wouldn't that be considered under number one?
I think it would be considered under number one in my mind.
Yeah.
Is that?
No. You could increase the single family lots and create larger setbacks, but
It
not
should be
reduce the
decrease
number
and
of
not
plat
increase.
requests. I'm suggesting that we want to see fewer households built on that property.
So instead of increase, it should be decrease.
No. That is a single lot size. We need the word size in there. So we can pencil in after the word family lots, the word size.
Yeah.
Yes.
And larger setback dimensions is the same thing, or size. Yes.
Yes. That's just clarifying the single family, consider an increase to single family lot size as was discussed. I think the second item is it the consensus of the board to include an additional, which would be 18, consider a reduction of the overall unit count. We don't need to nail the unit count down or anything like that, but is that the consensus of the board, or to the chair's point, that would be potentially addressed through item number 1.
I think we may need to add that. It's count, especially in the single family. And I think specifically where we were at, right?
Yes.
So
I mean, I'm
reduction in the single family, which includes the duplexes by definition, count.
Only single family count?
Well,
What
or do
you
we
want-
just be generic and just say count?
That's-
Let's
that
be
would be-
generic.
yes.
So number 18 is a reduction in the residence count.
The overall residential unit count.
And the other thing I was at, a good faith effort to achieve some sort of solution to Angel Trace Road.
I don't think we include that now. That's not their purview.
Yes, I do believe there's some limitations on off-site improvements under 160D7.
We can't make that a condition.
No.
I think
Well,
they've heard.
I'm not asking to make a condition. I'm asking it.
I believe there are limitations in statute.
Well, I'm not suggesting there aren't limitations. I mean, we're kind of making a request. These are the things that we'd like to see done.
Sure.
And all I'm saying is a good faith effort to find a solution to Angel Trace Road. They come back here and say, "Hey, we picked up the phone." we
I
called,
understand.
nothing
So
happened."
just to move it along, it sounds like we have 3 members that are not in favor of that condition.
That's correct. I don't. Anyway, I
Then
don't believe
we'll
we
just
can
move
add
on.
I don't
Yeah.
consider any of these conditions. I consider these bullet points for the applicant to address for you guys to nail down at the next time that we convene on this.
Yeah, because it's not a condition. It's simply.
Thank you, Grady. Yep.
So can we get that on the list, given Grady's clarification as to what these are?
We are creating a list to be a items of consensus for consideration.
That are lawfully considered. I don't
Yeah.
think expressing something that is improper is appropriate to be put on this list. I'm sure, I know how bright the applicant's attorneys are. I am certain they've heard it plenty of times. Whether or not they choose to do something about something they're not required to do is up to them. But they've heard you say Angel's Trace many times a day. But I don't think that's appropriate to be listed down as a.
I agree. It's Stuart.
Anything to add? Is that what you're?
Right.
On number 7, solar components to infrastructure, is that including active solar or just the?
Yeah, generic. So.
Or just the conduit?
Generic in that hopefully they've heard both.
Okay.
And we'll.
All right.
And we'll at least answer back.
All right.
I'm good as written.
Dibble?
I'm fine.
Okay.
As a matter of housekeeping, I don't know what the applicant thinks in timing you may need to address these kind of consensus points. Your next meeting is March 21st. Fortunately or unfortunately for me, I'm going to be in a trial that week starting March 18th in Pender County. And so logistically, that date will not work for me to be present. Unless you guys tell me you don't think you need someone in my shoes to be there. So we need to look at, we can't push it to the April meeting because then we're knocking up against the 60 days. So we either look at something prior to March 21st, really before March 18th, or my preference would be sometime maybe after that first week of April, get past Easter, as a special meeting that you could set. But if you think you can address these points in 2 weeks, then you could look at doing something sooner at the pleasure of the board.
Do we envision that the next step in this room will be the step that results in your recommendation one way or another? So we don't need 2 additional steps.
No.
We need 1 within the next 60 days. Is that?
I guess my preference that we do the next one soon enough that in case we have to, there's time to do it.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense to you, what I just said?
It does, but I also.
I mean, if we happen to get done next time, then that's good. Because I believe it's sort of an automatic approval when we get to the 60 days, right? No?
No.
What's the 60? No, right. But I still think the council would prefer us to make a recommendation one way or another, to hear from us. That's why they got us. So I guess all I'm saying is I would like the next one to go quick enough to, if there is a couple loose ends, let's call them, that need to get resolved, there's sufficient time to do that.
Okay.
But
I
guess the question is, based on this list and with a few changes, how much time do you think you need? Full 4 weeks?
At least 3 or 4 weeks, if we're talking about adapting a plan and providing that to staff, and then having an opportunity to digest it and explain it to you in a summary.
Could we schedule a special meeting then for March 14th? That would give you 3 weeks, and then we'd have a week in our pocket before the.
Yes,
What is it?
That's before
14th?
council's trial.
Is council available on 14?
The applicant's counsel is.
Yeah, but
Checking that now.
On
It
that
looks like
council. Never mind.
it looks like I am based on my electronic calendar, but I'm kind of old school. I have a manual calendar as well, but I've gotten better, so I think the 14th will work.
So I move that we convene a special meeting to review
we'll do that in a table.
the revised submission by Logan Holmes, scheduled for 9 a.m. on March 14th.
Okay.
Thank you for assembling.
Well, wait, we gotta have to make our final motion here. So on the list wise, we're all good. So I'll make a motion that we table the conditional zoning map amendment for Angels Trace with the distribution of list of project concerns, 18 of them, to be given to the applicant. And we will table this item until a special meeting that is called for 9 a.m. on Thursday, March 14th. Any seconds?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays, the ayes have it.
Thank you for putting this written summary together. Should we understand that this list of 17 notes is indeed the
18.
majority consensus will of the board?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sam, Matt, Tim, everybody, I'll get you a 18 bullet point email to you. That way you have it electronically, not just on a piece of
Thank
paper.
you so much for taking the time to do that. I think it improves the process.
Brady, thank you. You can go. Wes, you can go if you'd like, but we're always glad to have you. The next item is administrative comments, and I'm sure the administration is tired of making comments. Anything else, yes, other than planning the special meeting?
Say that again.
Other than planning the special meeting? And staff is happy?
Happy as can be.
Okay. Public comments. We do have a second public comment period on anything. This is comments, anything related to planning, et cetera. Does anyone from the public have any additional comments? Look out, Wes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Wes.
Same rule, 3 minutes.
Yep. John Shelton, 1176 Kingsmill Court, spoke earlier this morning. Thank you all very much for having the discussion you had, making it kind of open. These points you just came up with, the 17, 18, are they going to be available to the public as well in this immediate time frame or posted? You can't discuss with me, but a question. That's all.
Thank you.
And thanks again for your collaboration. It's real good.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Okay. Thank you. Best part of the day. Assuming nothing else, would anyone like a motion to adjourn the planning board meeting?
Allow me. Can we adjourn?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Means adjourned.